Ciao, ciao, buongiorno. Stiamo facendo il benvenuto,
Hello,
benvenute
everybody. This is a
a
welcome
tutti
to all
in
of you
questa seconda
to
giornata
this
di
second
Togetherness.
day of
eh.
togetherness.
Grazie di nuovo quelli
Thank
che ci
you
sono
once
stati
again for
ieri
those who were with us
e
yesterday.
oggi ci ritroviamo
And
e anche
today we
benvenuti
meet
a
again, and
tutti quelli
welcome to
che
all those who
si
have
aggiungono oggi.
decided to join us only today.
Allora, buon
So
pomeriggio
I
per
wish
quelli
you
che
a
sono
very good
nell'Europa e
afternoon for
buongiorno
those who
per
are in
quelli che
Europe,
sono più
and
al sud,
good morning for those
che
who are
ancora stiamo
elsewhere
attraversando la
and
mattina.
who are still going through the
Bene,
morning.
oggi anche sarà due blocchi no, avremo
Today
la
we will
stessa
have
metodologia
two
che dopo i
separate
coordinatrici del pane
blocks
ci
in our
diranno.
agenda, and
Allora
we follow the
possiamo
same scheme as yesterday,
cominciare
and therefore we can
con
certainly
questo primo panel.
begin
Non so
with
se
this
ancora
first
forse
panel.
possiamo dare qualche minuto per così
We're
quelli che
just going to
stanno
wait a few more
arrivando
minutes for those who are
fanno
logging in so
questo
that
di
we
vedere la traduzione,
know
no?
that they
Con
can
questo
select their
di
translation.
mettere nelle
And
lingue di
currently
ognuno,
you
di
are listening
provare
to
che
the English language. So
sia
this is
tutto
the
bene,
English language. Please point out if there are any
così
issues with
dopo
this
possiamo
language.
dare comincio, così ascoltate tutti bene.
And then we can, of course, begin, and we can make sure everybody can hear us properly.
Bene, adesso forse mentre posso dire,
As we
io
are
mi chiamo
doing
Ivana,
this,
sono
I'm going to introduce
dell'Argentina,
myself. I'm Ivana from Argentina,
sto vivendo in Bahia
and
Blanca
I live at
e
Bahia
anche
Blanca,
sono giornalista.
and I'm a
Allora è un
journalist.
piacere
It's a
condividere
pleasure,
questa
therefore,
mattina con
to
voi,
share
facendo
this morning with
questo
you
saluto e
through
dare
my
l'inizio
greeting
a
and
questa seconda
through
giornata.
the beginning of this second day.
Forse allora sì, mentre possiamo dare la parola,
And
così
we give the
cominciamo
floor
con la presentazione, no?
and
A
we begin with our
Lili
presentation to
Mungombosi, che lei ci
Lili
racconterà un po' di
Mungobosi,
più
who
chi sarà
will
questo primo
talk to
blocco.
us a little bit about this first
Sì,
block.
sì. Grazie Ivana. Allora, benvenuti
Thank you,
ancora
Ivana,
una volta.
and welcome once
Per
again
questo
for
pomeriggio il
this
nostro
afternoon.
primo
This is our
panelista è
first
Luciano Di Mele.
panelist who
Benvenuto
I'm introducing,
Luciano.
Luciano Di Mele.
Luciano
Welcome,
Di Mele
Luciano.
è
Luciano Di
ricercatore e
Mele is
docente
a
presso
researcher and
l'Università
at the
Telematica Internazionale
online international
Uninettuno di Roma. È
University Uninettuno
specializzato
in
in
Rome.
media
He's specialized
education
in media
e
education
tecnologie educative,
and
dottore di
pedagogical
ricerca in
technologies.
pedagogia
He is
presso
a
l'Università
professor
di Roma La
of research
Sapienza,
at La
ha lavorato
Sapienza,
a
and
diversi
he's worked on
progetti
a range of
sull'uso dei
projects on
media
the use of
in
media
contesti educativi
in
molto
educational
interessanti e
contexts, which is
arricchenti,
very interesting
e
and
sulla
enriching.
didattica dei
He
media,
works on
segretario
the
nazionale de
didactics
MED
of media. He
italiana
is
in Media Education. Ben arrivato
Secretary
Luciano e
General
siamo tutto
of Media
orecchio.
Education in
Grazie.
Italy. Thank you,
Grazie.
Luciano, and we're all
E allora
ears.
io ho preparato alcune,
I have
alcune
prepared
slide
a
così per
few
aiutarmi
slides just to
soprattutto a stare nei tempi,
aid
però mi
myself
dovete
to be in
consentire la
within the
condivisione.
time frame, but
Intanto
please allow me for sharing.
ringrazio
In the
Isabel, Lilli
meantime,
e tutti
thank you,
voi per
Isabel, Lily, and everybody for
l'invito e
the
per la
invitation
pazienza.
and for your patience.
Ecco, cercherò di stare nei tempi e per fare
I will
questo
try
ho
to keep
pensato
in
di
time, and to do
leggere
so, I thought
il
I
testo che avevo
should
preparato.
read
Forse
the
sarà meno
text which
interessante,
I
però
prepared. It
forse
will
più
be
sicuro di stare
less
nei tempi. Il
interesting,
titolo,
perhaps,
come
but
vedete, è
at least
Media
it'll give me a
Education
certainty
nell'era
to
dell'intelligenza
be
artificiale.
in my time
Sfide e
frames. Title
opportunità
is
per
Media
un'analisi
Education in the
critica
Time
dei
of
media.
Artificial Intelligence. Challenges and
La media
opportunity for a critical
education ha
analysis of the
storicamente
media.
avuto un ruolo
Historically, media
fondamentale nel
education has had a
fornire agli
fundamental role in
individui le
supplying to
competenze
individuals the necessary
necessarie per
skills in
interpretare e
order to
interagire
interpret
con i
and
mass media.
interact with mass media.
David Buckingham, nel suo
David Buckingham,
testo
in his text,
Manifesto per la Media Education,
Media Education
sottolinea
Manifesto,
l'importanza di
highlights the
comprendere i
importance of
seguenti
understanding the
concetti:
concepts of
linguaggio,
language,
rappresentazione,
representation,
produzione e
production, and
pubblico.
audience.
Questi elementi
These
sono
elements are
essenziali per
essential in
sviluppare
order
una
to develop
consapevolezza
a
critica nei confronti
critical
dei media.
awareness vis-à-vis
Se
the
il
media.
linguaggio ha
If the
caratteristiche
language of
quasi
media
sempre note,
has
almeno in
qualities which are
superficie,
almost
più
always known,
complesso è
at
invece
least in the
interpretare
surface,
i suoi
it's much more
significati.
complex to interpret
Nello
its
stesso tempo è anche
significance, and at the
importante
same
capire
time,
quali
it's
sono
also
le
important to understand
implicazioni
what
economiche dei
the
media
economic implications of
e
the
le
media
vaste
are
connessioni sociali
and the
che poi finiscono
wide-ranging
per
social connections
modellare la
which
nostra
then
identità.
mold our
Finora stiamo
identity.
parlando dei media, dei mass
So
media
far,
del
we have spoken about
Novecento,
media, the mass
che
media
hanno
of the
dominato il panorama
1900s, which
comunicativo,
dominated the
influenzando
communication
profondamente
panorama,
la cultura e la
deeply
società.
influencing
La
culture and
parola
society.
d'ordine della
The
media
watchword
education
of
a
media
quel tempo
education
era
at the time was to
demistificazione,
demystify,
ovvero
which means
liberazione da
to
credenze e
free from
ideologie che i media
beliefs and ideologies
inevitabilmente
that the media
portavano con loro.
inevitably brought with them.
Con l'avvento dei social
With
media nel
social
XXI
media
secolo, il
in the
panorama
21st
è
century,
cambiato
the landscape
radicalmente.
radically
La
changed.
svolta digitale ha reso
The digital
disponibili a molti gli strumenti
thrust
della
made
comunicazione, la possibilità di
communication
essere
tools available to
produttori
many. The
oltre che
possibility
utenti
of being
passivi dei
producers
media
as well as passive
era però
users of media
un'opzione che la
was,
media
however,
education
an
non si è
option that
lasciata
media
sfuggire.
education did
I
not
media
fall short
infatti
of.
si comprendono molto meglio se
Media
utilizzati
are better
direttamente
understood
per
if
produrre
directly
testi,
utilized in order to
immagini,
produce
video,
texts,
senza
images, and
trascurare la
video,
possibilità
without
di una
neglecting
sorta di
the
democratizzazione
importance of a kind
dell'accesso
of democratization of
all'informazione.
access to information.
Tuttavia, i social
However,
media hanno
social
anche
media also
introdotto tutta una
introduced
serie di
new
nuove
dynamics
dinamiche di
and new
interazione sociale
interactions in
e di
social and
comunicazione,
communication
nuove
terms,
problematiche
new issues
come ad esempio il
such as
cyberbullismo, il
cyberbullying,
sexting, l'hate
sexting,
speech,
hate
il
speech,
ghosting e
ghosting,
tante
etc.
altre forme, così come hanno dato
They
vita a una
also
nuova
gave
economia
rise to a new
dell'attenzione, cioè una
economics of
sorta di
attention,
economia
a
pronta
sort
ad
of an
occupare la nostra
economics
disponibilità di
ready
tempo,
to occupy
promuovendo
our
peraltro
available
nuove
time,
concentrazioni
promoting
economiche che
new
Shoshana
economic
Zuboff definisce il
concentrations that
capitalismo
Shoshana
della
Zuboff
sorveglianza,
defines
proprio perché la
surveillance
capacità, la
capitalism.
necessità di
This is the
controllare
ability that the
tutto quello che
need
noi
to
facciamo per
control everything we do
ottimizzare
in order
anche
to
il
optimize
guadagno dal punto di vista
the
economico.
earnings on the
In
point
questo
of view
caso
of those selling.
la media education
In
si è
this case,
dovuta
media education
adattare anche
had
qui
to
a
adapt
questa
here
nuova
to
realtà
this new
portata dai social
reality
media, insegnando
brought
agli
about by social
utenti
media,
a
teaching
navigare in
users to
un ambiente mediale
navigate in a media
che ha
environment
senz'altro
which
incrementato
has certainly
disinformazione e
increased
polarizzazione,
misinformation and
ma anche un
polarization,
ambiente
but
espressivo.
is also an
Henry
expressive
Jenkins
environment.
a questo
Henry
proposito
Jenkins,
parla
in
di
this sense,
competenze per la
speaks
cultura
about skills
partecipativa.
for participative culture.
Il rilascio nel 2022
The release
di
of
ChatGPT da parte di
ChatGPT in
OpenAI è
2022 on the
un'altra
part of
svolta
OpenAI AI is
importantissima per
another
questa nuova
very important
fase
milestone for this
della
new
comunicazione, ma
stage
forse
of
non solo della
communication, and
comunicazione.
certainly more.
Ed è anche una
And it is
nuova
also
svolta per la
a
media
new
education, quindi per
dimension
chi
in
si
media
occupa di media
education.
education.
Those who study
L'intelligenza
it and deal with it.
artificiale di tipo
Artificial
generativo
intelligence,
sta
when generative, is
trasformando ogni
transforming
aspetto della vita quotidiana, dal
every aspect
lavoro
of daily
alla
life, from
comunicazione.
work to
Sta producendo una
communication.
sorta
It is
di
producing a sort
accelerazione
of
dei processi di
acceleration
ragionamento, di
of
produzione di
reasoning
beni
process,
intellettuali,
of
con una disarticolazione fra
production
l'agire
of
umano,
intellectual assets,
l'intelligenza
with
e
a
la responsabilità
disarticulation
individuale.
between human action,
In
intelligence, and
questo
individual
caso
responsibility.
non si tratta di
It's not
formare gli
just, therefore,
insegnanti,
about
no? Gli insegnanti a scuola
training
sui tanti
teachers at
supporti che
school on the
l'intelligenza
many
artificiale offre
supports that
anche all'educazione,
AI
come
offers
in
to
tantissimi altri
education
campi.
in many
In
other
questo
fields as well.
caso, i
In
programmi di
this
media
case,
education
the media
devono
education
includere moduli
programs must
specifici
include
sul capire
specific
le
modules on
dinamiche
understanding
dell'intelligenza
the
artificiale,
dynamics of AI,
spiegando come funziona,
explaining how it
senza
works
trascurare le tante
without
implicazioni etiche.
neglecting the many
La
ethical
Guidance for
implications.
Generative AI in
The Guidance
Education
for
and Research
Generative
è un
AI in
documento
Education and Research
dell'UNESCO che
is a
fornisce
UNESCO
alcune
document
indicazioni relative
supplying some
all'uso etico
indications
dell'intelligenza artificiale,
pertaining to the
alla
ethical
comprensione
use
degli
of
algoritmi
AI,
che
understanding
governano le
algorithms
piattaforme
governing
sociali
social platforms,
capacità di
and the
riconoscere le
ability to
alterazioni dell'intelligenza
recognize
artificiale.
AI
Ad
alterations.
esempio, per fare un
For
esempio anche
example,
di come e
in
cosa
order
si può
to
insegnare
understand
a
what
scuola,
can be
gli
taught at
alunni
school,
possono confrontare, ad
students
esempio, le
may
risposte allo stesso prompt fornito da
compare
diversi large
the
language
answers to
model
the same
come
prompts supplied
ChatGPT
by
o
different large
Gemini
language
o
models such
Claude
as
e discutere le
ChatGPT, Gemini, or
differenze,
Claude,
perché
and
uno
discussing
ha
the
scritto in un
differences.
modo,
Why
perché
has one
l'altro
written
ha
in one
scritto in un
way
altro
and the
modo.
other in another?
E il debate, cioè la discussione in
The
classe, è
debate in
una delle
class
strategie
is
educative
one of the
necessarie per
necessary educational
affrontare in modo
strategies
completo
in order
l'intelligenza
to
artificiale.
take on AI
L'intelligenza
in a
artificiale ha
holistic
inoltre
way.
portato a termine
Artificial
la
intelligence
completa
has
smaterializzazione dei media.
furthermore
Se
dematerialized
nelle
all
prime
media.
fasi
If
dell'evoluzione
in the
mediale
early
l'enfasi
stages
era
of media
sulle
evolution
tecnologie,
the emphasis
sull'hardware,
was on
oggi
technologies,
a
on
dominare la
hardware,
scena è soprattutto
today
la
the
grande produzione
scene
e
is
disponibilità di
dominated
dati,
especially
il
by
nuovo
great production and
petrolio
availability of
dell'economia
data, the
ed
new
elemento
black
centrale di ogni
gold
tipo di
of economics,
comunicazione.
and the
Per
central
questo
element of
bisogna
every type of
affiancare alla
communication.
media literacy
This is
la
why
data
media
literacy,
literacy
che
needs
prevede la
to walk
necessaria
alongside
competenza per
data
comprendere i
literacy,
livelli di sicurezza,
which
il
entails the
rispetto della
necessary
privacy
skills
e
in
del
order to
trattamento
understand the
dei
levels of
dati.
security,
Un
the
tema
abidance to
significativo a
privacy laws,
riguardo
and
è
data
dato dalla
processing.
explainability,
One
ovvero la possibilità di leggere
significant
dentro la
theme
black
is
box
given
degli
by
algoritmi.
explainability, which means
Ogni
the option
intelligenza
to read
artificiale
within the
sviluppa
black
dei
box of
modelli che
algorithms.
includono
Every
vincoli,
AI
procedure
develops
che sono
models
per lo
which
più
include
nascoste
bonds and
all'utenza.
procedures which are usually
Quindi se
hidden
l'intelligenza
for the
artificiale è un
user.
nuovo
So if
partner che
AI
noi
is a
abbiamo per
new
numerose
operative
soluzioni del
partner that we
sapere,
have for
è
many solutions
importante
in
rendere
knowledge, it is
trasparenti le
important
procedure
to
che
make the
adotta.
procedures adopted
Allora,
transparent.
in questo scenario
In this
post-mediale di
post-media scenario
smaterializzazione dei
where
media,
media have been
tenendo
dematerialized,
fermi i
though
concetti chiave
we
che ho
keep
citato prima,
sound
quali
the
sono
key
i
concept I
nuovi
quoted
temi
earlier,
educativi
what are
che la
the
media education
new
deve
educational
in qualche modo
topics that media education
considerare?
needs
Sono i
to bear
concetti di
in mind?
intelligenza.
These are the
Come vedete
concepts
sono
of
concetti,
intelligence. As
diciamo,
you see,
di livello
they
superiore
are all
rispetto
at a
ai media,
higher
cioè cos'è
tier
l'intelligenza?
than media. What is intelligence? What
L'apprendimento,
is learning?
l'etica,
What is
lo
ethics?
sviluppo del
What
dialogo
is the
comunitario
development of
e
community
una
dialogue?
nuova
And a
comprensione
new
dell'esperienza
understanding
diretta,
of the
dell'esperienza in
direct
presenza.
experience in presence on
Quindi in conclusione,
face to face offline.
quello che
In
voglio
conclusion,
porre alla vostra attenzione sono
what I
alcune
place
sfide
before your attention
e
are some
ritengo che
challenges,
la media
and
education
I believe that media
rappresenta ancora
education
oggi una risposta
represents
fondamentale a
today a
queste sfide.
fundamental answer to
Con
contemporary
l'intelligenza
challenges.
artificiale
With
è imperativo
AI, it
aggiornare i
is
modelli
imperative
educativi.
to
Le
update
persone devono
educational models.
imparare a vivere
People need to
all'interno di una
learn to
nuova
live
ecologia dei
within a
media,
new
una nuova
ecology of the
dimensione a
media,
cui si
a new
aggiunge lo
dimension
spazio
to which we
conversazionale con i
add a
partner artificiali.
conversational space
In
with an
questo
artificial
scenario diventa
partner. In
importante
this
favorire
scenario, it is
anche un
important to
approccio
promote
trasversale,
a
che forse è anche
cross
quello che stiamo
border
facendo
approach,
oggi noi,
which is what
che
we are doing,
coinvolga esperti di
involving
diverse
experts
discipline
of
per
various
affrontare queste nuove
fields
sfide in
in
maniera
order to
integrata. Solo
table these
in questo
challenges in
modo
an
si può
integrated way. Only in this
comprendere e
way
capire
we will
come
be able
vivere
to
questa nuova
understand
fase
how to
della
live out this
comunicazione.
new stage of
Grazie
communication.
dell'attenzione.
Thank you
Io
for your kind
concluso, spero
attention,
di essere stato
and
nei
I
tempi
hope I was
stabiliti.
within the
Grazie
necessary
Luciano.
timeframes. Thank you,
Tante
Luciano.
cose,
Many
ma
things,
proprio l'ultimo me la
but
porto via
the last one
perché
stays with me
vorrei
because
proprio vivere
I
queste
would like
ore
to live
come
out these
una delle
hours
risposte alle
as
sfide che
one
stiamo
of the
affrontando
answers
oggi,
to
come
the
dici
challenges
tu.
we are
Questo
looking
incontro
at today. As you say,
in
this
qualche modo
encounter,
è una
which
risposta,
somehow
una
is
via di
an answer,
ricerca.
is a
Grazie,
path for
grazie davvero.
research. Thank you
Grazie a
very
voi.
much. Thank you.
Allora, passiamo
And so we
al secondo
move
panelist di
on
questo
to the
pomeriggio.
second panelist of this
Patrizia
afternoon,
Bustamante,
Patrizia Bustamante,
comunicatrice
who
sociale,
is a social
giornalista, dottore
communicator,
in
a
scienza della
journalist, a
comunicazione
doctor in
all'Università
science of
Salesiana
communication
di
at the
Roma,
Salesian University in Rome,
insegnante e ricercatrice,
professor
attualmente
and researcher,
insegnante
currently
presso l'Istituto
teaching
Universitario
at the
Politecnico Gran
Polytechnic
Colombiano.
University Institute,
Linee
the
di
Grand Colombian
ricerca,
Polytechnic. Research lines
comunicazione e
are
cultura,
communication and
comunicazione per
culture,
il
communication
cambiamento sociale.
for social change.
Ha numerose
Many
pubblicazioni in materia.
publications in
Allora,
this topic.
Patrizia,
So,
a te la
Patrizia,
parola.
over to you.
Bene, grazie, buongiorno a tutti, grazie al professore che mi ha preceduto. Un tema
Thank you
sfide
to the
enormi.
professor who
Dunque, io vorrei
preceded me with the
comunicarvi
huge
con lei
challenges.
in questo momento
I'd like to communicate
un'esperienza che è
an
stata fatta.
experience
Sto parlando in italiano,
that
scusate,
was carrying
però
out.
sono
Oh,
salutare.
I'm sorry.
Un'esperienza che ha sido hecha
I'm going
estamos
to
realizando en
speak
Medellín,
in
Colombia.
Spanish. So this experience was carried out in
Una
Medellin,
experiencia
in Colombia, a
reciente
very
de
meaningful recent
educomunicación
experience
en el ámbito ciudadano.
in communication
Se trata
in
de
the
Seniors
city
Art,
area.
el mundo a un clic de distancia. No sé, no sé.
So it is a dialogue
El mundo a un clic de distancia, que es una estrategia de activismo social
at a
y
distance
comunicación digital
with
para el adulto mayor en el uso y
social
aplicación de
communication
dispositivos
for
móviles.
old adults in
Esto se hace para
mobile
responder a una
means.
convocatoria que
And
hemos
this is
ganado
to answer to
por parte de la
a
alcaldía de Medellín,
bid
denominada
that we
Medellín palpita
won
desde sus territorios.
in
Ahora quisiera como
the
ofrecer,
area.
pues habría tanto que decir, pero al menos ofrecer una argumentación
So
de algunos autores que me
this
parece importante
offers a
mencionar.
communication about some
Primero que
authors
todo, hemos
that it is
tratado de
important
identificar
to
la
mention.
comunicación
So first of
estratégica
all, we
en la
identify
comunicación
strategic
como
communication
campo
and communication
en una
as a
apuesta
field
epistemológica
that responds to
distinta
an
o mejor, que
epistemological
no solo tiene que
commitment
ver con el mundo
which has
del
to
lucro,
do with
sino una estrategia
not only to
comunicativa
the profit-making
orientada a la
area, but
información.
an
Por eso me
epistemological commitment
permito,
oriented
para
to
el caso que nos
communication.
ocupa, citar a Bourdieu. La
So
comunicación y la
I will
educación desde la dimensión de la praxis,
talk about
que da
this from the
cuenta de la
point of view of a
existencia de
practice
una
that
estructura de relaciones
considered
objetivas sobre los actores
subjective structure
sociales,
about the
de los
social
procesos comunicativos
actors
y
and the
educativos que
communication
dirigen o orientan las
process
prácticas.
that direct or guide
Si bien el
our
propósito
practice,
de esta pequeña
as well as
intervención no es
educational
entablar una
processes
discusión sobre
also.
la comunicación como campo, sino como una práctica social
The purpose of this
educativa,
work is not
este
to engage in a
abordaje permite
discussion about
entender que
communication as an
nosotros aún estamos
epistemic field, but as a
recorriendo
social and
un
educational
camino de
practice.
tensiones,
And this
el
approach
cual
allows us to
abre
understand that
posibilidades
that is
a
a
un
path of
diálogo,
tensions
creo yo,
is
interdisciplinario e
still being
incluso
traveled
transdisciplinario.
and opens possibilities for an
Para dar
interdisciplinary
lectura a
and
esta reflexión también me
transdisciplinary
parece
dialogue.
importante
Also, it is
recordar
important
a Habermas
to
cuando
remember
nos
Habermas,
invita a mirar la comunicación estratégica
who
en un
says that
escenario de
strategic
interacciones
communication
simbólicas
is
y de prácticas mediadas
situated as
por
a
la
scenario of
tecnología.
symbolic
Si
interactions
me permiten,
and
yo quisiera
technologically mediated
compartir
practices.
un archivo, pero hemos tenido dificultades con el tema técnico acá.
I wanted to
Al menos unas
share
fotografías
my
de lo que ha
screen,
significado, pero
but
veo
I
que
wanted to
no
show you some
logramos.
pictures, but I don't know if I will be
Estas
able to do
fotografías de lo
that.
que fue esta experiencia.
Pictures about this
Entonces,
experience. So
esto que diré lo hemos llamado educación y cultura y que en
So
síntesis para
education and
nosotros
culture,
en
which
este
is
abordaje que hacemos desde América Latina, esta
we
relación de
from Latin
comunicación y
America, we
educación
have
pasa no solo por
this
mirar,
experience
esto no está
that
en el texto, pero quisiera decirlo,
uh,
no
uh,
solo mirar
that it
esa
is
mirar,
not
mirar los medios y cómo se
looking
comportan en
at
un
the media
determinado
and
contexto,
about
sino
how
que
they
hemos tratado
behave in a
también de hacer
given
como una
context,
apropiación
but
de
we
los
tried
medios en
to
función de unas nuevas pedagogías
appropriate
diversas
ourselves of
nuevas
the media in
generaciones.
function of the purpose which
Y
is
en
going
tal
towards a new
sentido,
technologies and new
podemos
standards
entender
of
la relación
interaction among
entre
human
educación,
beings.
cultura,
So in this
comunicación.
sense, we can
Para
understand that
nosotros
the
es una
interactions between
experiencia
interaction and communication is
que va
crucial.
configurando el tejido
We have
social.
seen this experience of
Y este último,
interdependence that
entendido como
configure
una trama
a new
de
form of a
relaciones
social
simbólicas,
fabric,
materiales,
and
cotidianas,
which is certainly
organizadas y
all
estructuradas de
set
acuerdo con
of
unos proyectos
symbolic
colectivos en los que estamos
means, and it is important to structure this
en una
configuration
educación desde y para el
starting
mundo de
from
la vida,
collective
que estaría en
projects
la
such as the
búsqueda
one we are
permanente
carrying
del
out.
bien
We have
común,
to go towards a
de la
communication
posibilidad de ser
oriented to
actores
life, a communication
social
oriented to
en
common
esta
good.
cotidianidad a través de la
So we
comunicación,
want to be
donde
social
buscamos
active
con
arts
estas
in this
experiencias que
daily
estamos haciendo acá en
communication.
Colombia,
And with
un
this
buen vivir, como
experience
decimos
in
ahora en
Colombia, we try
nuestra
to go
manera de hacer ese bien,
towards a
un
well-being,
bienestar de los diversos actores
an
sociales.
all-encompassing well-being,
De ahí
a
que
social status that enables
estamos
the well-being
tratando
of
de
all the
comprender
social
la
players
comunicación
who are
estratégica
involved.
como
So we are
mediación
trying to understand
educativa.
strategic
En
communication
palabras de una
as a
autora
synonymous of
argentina,
communicative
profesora Sandra Mazzoni,
mediation.
estamos
According to
entendiendo la
Professor
comunicación
Sandra
estratégica
Mazzoni,
como un paradigma dotado
today
de
we see strategic
relacionalidad
communication as a
que proporciona un
paradigm
nuevo
that
sujeto
provides
comunicativo
for
en
a
nosotros
relationship and
como sujeto
provides
comunicativo.
for a new
Y por eso lo
subject,
que les
the
quería compartir,
we.
lástima que las
We
imágenes no nos
becomes
están
the new
funcionando, no
subject.
logramos
So I
la
wanted to
superposición,
share
es la
to
experiencia
you not only these
denominada
pictures that I
Seniors
cannot show
Up,
to you, I'm sorry
el
about that,
mundo
but
a
I
un
want to
clic de
share this
distancia.
experience entitled
Un aporte a la reducción de la brecha
Seniors
digital
Up.
e intergeneracional. Esta
So it
iniciativa
is
que fue ejecutada
about an
dentro y ejecutada por la
intergenerational search
Universidad
for
del
well-being.
Encuentro, el Politécnico
This is organized
Colombiano,
by
hemos
the
abordado una
Polytechnic
metodología de
Gran
aprender
Colombiano
así,
University
de
with
una investigación, un
headquarters in
enfoque
Medellin.
participativo
We
y
promoted
después de un
the
diagnóstico
strategy of learning
sobre
by
prácticas
doing.
actuales de
And
consumo
after the
digital,
diagnosis of the
se
present
llevó a cabo un
practices of
proyecto cuyo
digital
objetivo fue
consumption,
educar
we made a
mediante
project whose aim
40
was to
talleres
educate and
por 2
train
semanas
other people
en el
through
manejo de
40
aplicaciones y
workshops
herramientas para dispositivos
distributed in
móviles
that
a un grupo de
have
cien adultos
a duration of
mayores
2 weeks
de 50
each,
años
and we gave
vinculados, digamos, acá se
these
dice
tools to a group of
comuna,
100 adults
a un
over
sector, a un
50
quartiere
who
allá.
are connected
Y
to a
además de
specific
aportar a la
neighborhood
inclusión digital
of
de los
our
mayores,
city, of
se
Medellin.
contribuyó
And in
a
addition to
instalar esa
contributing to
brecha
the digital inclusion
digital,
of the
pero también
elderly, this experience has
intergeneracional,
contributed to addressing the
de aquella
intergenerational
soledad
gap,
y desconexión
as well as
social de los
loneliness and social
ancianos, invitándolos
disconnection
de nuevo a la escuela.
of the elderly,
Por eso hablamos
inviting
de
them
cambiando vidas.
back to
En
school,
este
as
proyecto
it were.
trabajaron
So
los
we
sectores
decided to use
involucrados,
this
los adultos
slogan,
mayores como
changing
beneficiarios
life.
directos de los
We
cursos, sus
involved
familiares
the
más
elderly and
cercanos,
also
pero
their
también los
members of their
jóvenes
family. And also
de
we
nuestra universidad
involved
que
the
se
young
convirtieron
people, the
en
young students of the
facilitadores, en
Polytechnic,
profesores de estos ancianos.
since
Y
they
por
became the
tanto se vivió una
facilitators,
experiencia
like
de
as
alteridad
it were the teachers
que
of those
evidenciaba también
elderly.
un anclaje
So this is an
mundo-vital,
experience of
el
alterity
mundo de la vida del que
that
tantas veces hemos hablado, y por tanto una suerte de
they
nuevos
became very
relatos
concrete and very fruitful.
individuales y
So we
colectivos,
saw a
una
new
reconstrucción de la
narration
memoria
from the
en
individual and
estos
collective point
territorios
of view, a
habitados por
reconstruction of a
años,
memory in the
consolidando
territory
el
that have
tejido
been
social,
inhabited
el
for
bien
years,
común.
thus consolidating
Quisiera destacar lo
the
que no logro
social
mostrar.
fabric. And I want to
Ver estos
emphasize
ancianos felices,
something I could not
conectados con su
show
propia
with the pictures. We
realidad,
saw many
con su
smiles in the
pasado
faces of
y
the
con
old
estos
people,
jóvenes
a
que se
recognition of the old
convirtieron
people
en
with the community,
acompañantes para
and the new
estas
connection
nuevas
between the
prácticas
elderly and the young
digitales que a
people.
veces los
And
marginan.
these digital good
Y por eso
practices are
quisiera
certainly
terminar
means to get to this
evidenciando cómo,
connection.
con
So
una
I
frase
want
de la
to
profesora
reach to a
Cristina
conclusion,
Montoya, que ha intervenido ayer en el
showing
presidente
that how
Encuentro.
we
Ella dice algo que me parece
got to this
interesante,
goal.
cómo estas
Cristina
acciones
Montoya said,
comunicativas que ella llama
express this in a powerful way. We have to go to generative aims, communicative actions, which I call generative, she wrote, are mainly aimed at the creation of vital social relationships, the production of relational goods and inclusion. So, this process enabled us to give to this participatory research the possibility to understand something that is very important for us in Colombia. We have to understand what is happening at a local level, what we are trying to build on a daily basis, because all of these enables to interconnect the citizens with their territory. So this experience whose slogan is the world at a click away, refers to the idea of McLuhan, the global village, where through technology the elderly can have a good cohabitation. And as a conclusion, I want to mention again Cristina Montoya, who wrote, there where division or fragmentation seem to silence the word, the person who is capable of making the other present can rediscover the way to reopen the channel of communication, to make that lymph of sociality flow and capable to revitalizing the entire social fabric and recognizing themselves as part of an interconnected whole. They can, from the point of view of the network in which they are, to reawaken hope. And as a conclusion, just just one more sentence for my conclusion.
Grazie.
No, there is no time. Okay, that is a beautiful experience. Some of the things you said remained, like strategic communication, that is to be part of the educational practice. So that's a good provocation indeed, and very deep, this generative communication that generates new narrations. And especially I like very much that it produces smiles, because a communicator must be a dispenser of joy, the joy that the world is searching for. So thank you again.
Allora, il nostro terzo contributo
So third contribution will be given to us by Maria Belen Fernandez, who is has Director of Mass and Communication and Education, Faculty of Journalism and Social Communication of the National University of La Plata, Argentina. She's a researcher in the field of communication and education in the area of education institutions and training. She's a post-degree professor in several universities, and she issued many publications. So I give the floor to Maria
Buenos
Belén.
días, buenas tardes a todos
So,
y a todas.
good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I want to thank Netwan for being able to take part in this seminar, as this is my first participation in an initiative promoted by Netwan. So I want to share the trajectory built in the field of communication education since 1995 from the Faculty of Journalism and Social Communication of the National University of La Plata in Argentina. And as Patricia stated, my area is epistemological position from the Latin American matrix.
latinoamericano la entendemos como
So the status of
político,
knowledge from the
estratégico
perspective
y
of the field
cultural,
of communication education understood as
caracterizada
strategic
por un
and
lado por
cultural
una
and
posición
cultural
epistemológica
political
transdisciplinaria
standing point
de
is characterized on the one
descentramiento
hand by an
y por otro
epistemological
lado
position of
un fuerte
decentering
carácter experiencial.
and on the
Esto ha
other
sido
by
lo que
its
nos ha movilizado
experiential
a la
character.
primera investigación, los primeros trabajos
This
realizados con la pretensión de dar
has urged
visibilidad
us to
a
make
la
first
maravillosa
research trying
cantidad
to
de
give
experiencias que en
visibility
América Latina
to the
existían
beautiful
en este
quantity of
campo
experiences that in
y
Latin
que
America already
estaban,
existed in this
si se
field.
quiere, desarticuladas, no tenían
And we can
el
say
peso
they were not
de la visibilidad. Y
articulated
nos
yet. They
parecía
had
que
not
eran
the
todas
burden of
ellas las que habían
visibility.
configurado el campo comunicación
So we
educación
had the
durante
impression
décadas
that
y que
all of
pretendíamos darle
them
carácter académico, político y cultural desde este
were
espacio
very
universitario.
fragmented and wanted to give a
Para ello,
strategic
como
political character
recorrido
to
de este
these
trabajo, podemos
epistemological
encontrar,
and
junto con el
institutional
señalamiento de Jorge
proposals.
Huergo, que ha
So
sido el
we want
referente
to introduce,
de esta línea de investigación,
along with
identificamos tres momentos en la configuración del campo comunicación
Professor
educación en América
Jorge
Latina.
Huergo,
Un primer momento que llamamos
this experience of Latin
protoinstitucional,
America.
un
A first
segundo momento
moment that I
fundacional del
will call
campo y un tercer momento de desarrollo o
proto-institutionality,
expansión. En este primer
and
momento de protoinstitucionalidad es donde
and
nosotros,
then
a
the
partir de
development.
la investigación
And
realizada en los
so
primeros años
starting from
recientes del año
our
95,
research in the first
encontramos
years,
en las
starting from
distintas experiencias de las que les
1995,
mencionaba,
we found in the
unas
different
matrices
experiences
constitutivas
that
que
I
estaban dadas a
mentioned,
través,
some
lo pudimos
constitutive
recuperar a través de
matrices,
un ejercicio genealógico de los
and we made this
perspectivas
through
que
a
estaban presentes en esas
genealogical
experiencias,
study
donde aparecen
on
Paulo
those
Freire, Raúl
experiences,
Taborda, Rodolfo Kusch,
and we
Simón
found
Rodríguez,
the experiences
la
carried out
teología de
by
la
Paulo Freire,
liberación con
Saul
Gustavo
Taborda,
Gutiérrez, las
Rodolfo
luchas obreras
Kusch,
y
Simón
campesinas del
Rodriguez, Liberation
continente,
Theology with
entre
Gustavo
otras.
Gutierrez,
En
the
definitiva,
workers and
tradiciones
peasants struggles of
constitutivas
the
del
continent,
campo
among
en
others.
América Latina
In short,
que disputaron el
traditions
paradigma
that
civilizatorio,
disputed the
civilización y
modern
barbarie, y
civilizing
en vez
paradigm in Latin
instalaron
America.
la relectura política
The
y
paradigm
social de este
civilization
nuevo par
or
conceptual
barbarism,
característico de América Latina que ha sido
and that
liberación o
instead
dependencia.
installed the political and
Lo
social
comunicacional y lo
reading in the
educativo
concept of
como lugar
pair
en donde se
liberation or
produjeran
dependence.
sentidos en
The
dichas
communicational
experiencias
and educational
emancipatorias de
fields
educación.
are
Allí
the places
abrevan
from
en las
which
vías
meanings were
constitutivas
produced in these
las
emancipatory
proyecciones y
experiences of the
las
region.
líneas estratégicas desarrolladas
Yes.
en el campo
And
desde
this
entonces
was
a la fecha.
about
El
all
segundo
the lines of
momento fundacional es
developed
cuando
in the
aparecen ya
field
las primeras
from
referencias
that moment on.
específicas,
A second founding
las
moment in
significaciones
which the
explícitas
first
de
explicit
comunicación y
references
educación, en
or
la cual
meanings of
se acuña un
communication
nuevo
education
capital
appear,
simbólico que aparece en disputa en el
in which
sentido
the
político-cultural
symbolic
del campo.
capital is minted
Aparece
in
la perspectiva de la
dispute for
educomunicación,
the
de la
political cultural meaning
comunicación
of the field.
barra educación,
The
pero
perspective of
todas ellas lo que
communication,
plantean es
communication and
describen la
education,
complejidad y la densidad, y la pudimos recuperar a través de un ejercicio
and
de
all of this tells us
cartografía
about the
de esas
complexity and
experiencias
density.
en los ámbitos
And
en los
we
que
could
estos
recover
se llevaron
these
adelante
through
y cuáles fueron las tradiciones estratégicas y las representaciones y las
to
intervenciones
describe this
prácticas
complexity
que
and density
todas
through a
ellas fueron
cartography of strategic
plasmando.
traditions,
Por
representations,
último,
and
como último momento
hegemonic and alternative practical
del
trajectories
campo,
which
según
were
el planteo de
constructed
Huergo,
recovering the various
podemos
positions.
recuperar lo que se considera como
According to
donde nos
Juan
encontramos hoy,
Huerco,
¿no? En este
the third
momento
moment
de
is called
desarrollo y de
development or
ensanchamiento del
broadening
campo, donde
of the
se
field,
incorporan nuevas problemáticas
in
como
which
las que
emerging
hemos
problems are
compartido
incorporated,
en estas primeras
such as the one I
intervenciones.
shared to you
La perspectiva
in
adquiere
the
relevancia
last few
para la
minutes,
comprensión
as
de
well
los
as the
procesos de transformación
perspective
cultural
that
tan
becomes
profundos,
relevant for the understanding of
aportando
the processes
la
of
perspectiva de
cultural
la articulación
transformation,
entre la
providing
producción de sentido
articulations between the
de
production
dichas
of meanings
transformaciones La formación
in the face
subjetiva
of
que
these
hay
transformations
a la par de esta
and
nueva,
subjective
de esta nueva
formation
cultura mediática,
that
cultura
grows
digital, y los equipamientos
with this new digital
tecnológicos y
culture,
culturales
along with
disponibles.
cultural,
Entendemos que
technological
es
equipment
necesario
that is made
repensar en
available
clave
to
de
us.
articulaciones de estas
We
tres
understand we need to think everything in
Quiero
terms of
señalar
articulation of
que
these three dimensions.
estos trabajos en la región
And
de América Latina nos parecía importante
in the region of Latin
aquellas
America,
experiencias que aparecían, si se
I
quiere,
want to
con
emphasize the
cierta
experience
dispersión, fueron adquiriendo,
that came about with a
fueron siendo
certain
amalgamadas y
dispersion,
adquiriendo mayor
fragmentation,
densidad y referencia a través de
but they
algunas organizaciones que me parecía
acquired
importante
more
mencionar en este
references through
recorrido, si se quiere,
an organization that I want to
genealógico del campo
mention
en América Latina.
in this
Y estas son
genealogical
algunas
analysis we're
organizaciones como
doing in
CESPAL,
about
que es
Latin America.
el
Some
Centro Internacional de Estudios Superiores
organizations
en Comunicación
are
para
the
América Latina, creada en
CESPAL,
1996,
del
la Asociación
International
Latinoamericana de
Center for
Educación
Advanced Studies in
Comunicación Popular,
Communication for Latin
ADE, en el
America,
72,
established in
el Centro de
1956.
Comunicación Educativa,
Then
la Crujía, en el 74, entre
ALER, the
otras,
Latin American
en las que también
Association for
señalo
Popular
los
Education and
antecedentes del
Communication,
CIGNI
established in
latinoamericano, que
1972,
se conforma como tal,
and
no
the
crece,
Center for Education
pero
and
que van a estar
Communication, La
de la mano del CELAC,
Crujía,
siendo clave en los procesos
established
de
in
comunicación y
1974.
educación latinoamericanos. Esta
And these are
matriz
considered by CELAM
latinoamericana
by covering a
nos
key
permite
place
reconocer
in the Latin
un modo de
American
entender
culture.
la
And this
comunicación y la
enables
educación
us
no en su sentido
to
informacional,
identify education communication
performativo,
not in the
sino en su
informational and
potencia
performative
dialógica
meaning,
de expresión
but in
de
its
sujetos en la
dialogical
construcción de
potential as an
comunidades
expression
y
of
proyectos
subjects
de
in the
comunicación
construction of
colectivos.
communities and projects of
En los
collective
trabajos de la
projects
cartografía
of
hemos señalado las
communication.
distintas perspectivas
In the
tres
works of
tradiciones fuertes que
cartography,
siguen
we
operando, la de las
marked
instituciones
different
educativas y los horizontes
traditions,
culturales,
such
la
as
educación
one
y
of
los
the
medios y la educación y las tecnologías.
uh,
Respecto del desarrollo
education
que
and
se ha señalado
technology.
precedentemente, las que han tenido más peso
And
han
about
sido
the
la educación y
development,
medios y
we spoke
educación y
about
nuevas
that were more
tecnologías.
important were
En particular,
communication media
la
and communication,
perspectiva
the
de
new
comunicación y educación en
technologies,
las
and
instituciones
especially
educativas ha
perspective
estado
of
más relegada. Y
communication
este ha sido el espacio en donde yo me
and
he puesto
education
prioridad,
was the space where
construyendo
I put
desde
my
espacios
priority
formativos en el análisis de
by
la
starting from
comunicación en las
spaces of
instituciones
communication in the
educativas
analysis of
y a la vez en
communication
el
in
diseño y gestión de políticas
educational
educativas e
institutions, as
intervenciones
well as in the design and
sociocomunitarias.
management of
Esta
educational
línea
policies
de
and in
expertise y de trabajo
socio-community
me ha
interventions.
permitido
These
construir una serie de
trajectories
pistas metodológicas
have
transdisciplinarias
produced
provenientes de la
knowledge and
etnografía, la
transdisciplinary
investigación
theoretical,
narrativa, la
methodological
planificación
clues coming from
comunicacional, entre
ethnography,
otras.
narrative
De ella
research, and
deviene
communication
la
planning.
creación de un
From
constructo
these
teórico-metodológico
comes the
definido como
theoretical
mirada,
methodological
relato y acción.
construct
En
of
esta dinámica
vision story
para
and
producir
action, vision story
acciones
and action,
comunicacionales,
developed to produce
intervenciones
communication
comunicacionales que
interventions
desencadenen procesos de transformación cultural
that
en los
trigger a
sujetos que
process of
comparten
cultural
sus prácticas,
transformation
las
in
instituciones, sus comunidades de referencia,
the
en términos
players and their
relacionales.
practices, in institutions
La
and
línea de
the
investigación en la
reference
cual he
communities.
trabajado
The
particularmente
line of
ocupa el
research
de
developed at the
el
moment
lugar de la
is
comunicación
the
institucional en la
one
formación de docentes
is that of
desde la
communication
perspectiva
education
comunicación
and
y
education
educación.
institutions
Estos
and training.
rastreos situados nos han permitido aportar no solamente
And this
a
enabled
la
us
dimensión de
to
la comunicación en las instituciones,
approach not
sino
only the
también
dimension of
ver los
communication
modos de
institutions, but
apropiación de la
also
perspectiva
to
comunicación y
see
educación
how
en las
we can
prácticas
appropriate
docentes,
this
entendiendo que allí hay
perspective
un
in
gran
the
desafío
teaching
para poder poner en
practices,
juego
being
todo lo que
aware
nos
that there
está
is a great
planteando las
challenge here in
profundas
order to
transformaciones de
put at
contar
stake
con
everything
docentes
that
que puedan comprender esta
we
dimensión para intervenir
have
con una
to
mirada
face with
que
the new
pueda
digital
confrontar,
culture. So
que
teachers have to
pueda
understand all of
generar
these
capacidades críticas en
by
las nuevas
a vision that
generaciones
can
para
develop
poder
critical
intervenir
capability in the
respecto
new
a lo que
generations in
estos
order to be able to
profundos cambios
intervene and be
enfrentan como
active
sociedad.
in these
Muchas
deep
gracias por el tiempo y
changes.
escucha y por el
So,
espacio de
thank you
participar.
for this
Grazie, grazie
time
Maria Elena.
that
Grazie.
you
Tanti
gave
spunti,
me.
tanti provocazioni. Mi è
Uh,
piaciuto molto,
Thank
come
you.
dici,
I like very much
comunicare
what
non
you
è tanto
say.
passare
Communicating is
l'informazione,
not only
ma
passing
quanto
information, but
renderci
rather
coscienti che
it is
siamo
to
tutti
become
soggetti,
aware. We
espressioni
are all
per produrre
actors
la
and expressions in order
trasformazione
to produce
potente e
a
dare
powerful
visibilità
transformation and give
al vissuto di tutti i
visibility
giorni.
to our
Rilettura
everyday life. So a
politico-educativo al
political,
vissuto.
educational
Questo mi è piaciuto moltissimo,
reading of what
perché
we live. I
bisogna
like this very, very much
praticamente
because
dare leva, dare
we
importanza alle
must give
esperienze delle
importance to
persone.
the
Questo è
experience
molto
of
bello.
concrete experience of people, and that
Non
is
siamo macchine.
very good. We are not
Grazie, grazie
machines.
davvero.
So thank you very
Sì.
much.
Allora, il nostro prossimo dono lo riceviamo
Our
da
next gift
professor
is
Pasco
received
Tot,
by Professor Franco
che
Toth,
è ricercatore
who
all'Istituto
is a
Universitario
researcher at
Sofia
the Sophia
Firenze,
University Institute
dottore in
in
linguistica
Florence,
applicata all'Università
professor
Janus
of applied
Pannonius,
linguistics
spero
at the
che
Ayanus
pronuncio
Pannonius.
bene,
I hope I'm pronouncing
licenza in
correctly,
Sacra
and
Teologia
a
Pontificia
licentiate in
Universitaria
sacred theology
Lateranense,
at the Lateran
membro del Centro
University,
Scuola ABBA
member of the
Net
ABBAT
One
School Center Net One
della rete Dialogo
of
Multipolare
the
e la rete, scusate,
and the
Dialogo Multipolare in Europa.
Multipolar Dialogue in Europe
Ha
Network.
fatto moltissime
He
pubblicazioni,
has
linee di
published a lot.
ricerca,
His
teoria della
research lines are
comunicazione,
theory of
dialogo,
communication,
giornalismo
dialogue,
dialogico.
and dialogical
Professor
journalism. Professor Toth,
a te la parola.
over to you.
Ok, buongiorno, buonasera a tutti.
Hello, everybody.
Condivido adesso
I'm
il mio testo, non so se
going to
si
share my
vede.
text. I hope you can see it.
Va bene, vero? Allora, il mio contributo
So my
dovrebbe essere
contribution
piuttosto teoretico.
is
Non so
more
se si,
in
non si
terms
vede,
of
si vede la
theory.
condivisione?
Can you
Il
see
testo?
my text?
No?
No, non ancora.
Not yet.
E adesso?
And now?
Sì.
Yes.
Sì, ok. Allora, affronterò un problema teoretico, vedremo,
So I will
spero
deal
di
with a theoretical problem.
avere adesso il tempo di
I hope to
spiegare
have
qualcosa in
time
termini
to
semplici,
explain things in
perché
simple
vorrei
terms,
parlare di
because
una
I would like to
svolta
speak about a
nell'approccio alla
point of
comunicazione
change in the approach to
nei nostri
communication
giorni,
in our days,
che si chiama concezione partecipativa della
which is
comunicazione.
called participative
Questa è
conception of
una
communication.
concezione adesso abbastanza
This
diffusa
is a concept which is
e
quite
il mio interesse
widespread, and
verso,
my
diciamo, la
interest
concettualizzazione
is about the
dell'esperienza
conceptualization
di
of
Chiara
the
Lubick
experience of Chiara
sulla
Lubick
comunicazione.
on communication.
Lì, nella sua
And
visione,
in her
in
vision,
genere sulla vita umana
usually on human
comunitaria,
life as community
e
life,
viene fuori il concetto della
what
partecipazione
emerges is the concept of
molto,
participation.
perché per lei praticamente la
For
partecipazione
her,
oppure la
participation
vita dell'uomo
or life
è un
of
invito alla partecipazione
man
alla vita
is an
divina
invitation to divine life.
dell'uomo singolo e della comunità.
This is individuals, of course, and
E
communities at the
praticamente
same
questo
time.
è un accesso
This is
all'essere nei suoi
access
termini.
to being in its
Noi potremmo
terms.
dire a tutte le
We could
risorse
say
che
to all
noi abbiamo
those
bisogno.
resources
Lei
that
ad
we
un certo
need.
punto dice che
She
la
says
mia
at
vita
a
è
certain point
cambiata
that my life has
quando ho
changed
capito che
when
la
I
mia
understood
posizione nella vita
that
essere
my position
rivolto
in
verso
life
il
was
Padre
to
come
be
Gesù
looking to
e
the
la vita
Father
della
as
comunità
Jesus, and
è
the life of
essere
community
rivolto
is
con nostro
to
fratello Gesù Franco
look
verso il
towards
Padre
our
e accedere a
brother or
tutte le
sister
risorse che
and
noi
the
abbiamo
Father and
bisogno
access
nella
all
vita.
the resources we
Allora,
need
e
in
questo
life.
sarebbe il quadro,
This
se volete,
is
mistico
the
oppure
mystical
spirituale
or spiritual
e
picture
partecipare,
of
divinizzazione
participation.
dell'uomo.
It's the
E questo è
divinization of
un
humans,
concetto molto forte.
and it's a very
Una,
strong concept.
allora, qui vedo che lei a questo proposito
Here I see
ha
that in this sense,
un concetto dell'unità, del
she
cammino
has a
umano e della
concept of
comunicazione
human
molto
progress and
forte.
communication,
Lei
which is
dice
very
che
strong.
dovremmo partire
She says that we
da
should
questa
start
condizione di
from this
partecipazione alla vita
condition of
divina,
participation to
dobbiamo
divine
partire
life.
all'unità. Questa
We
unità
need
che
to
non è
move
uno
on towards
sforzo
unity,
umano,
which is not a
ma
human
lei
effort,
racconta la sua
but
esperienza che
she
noi con i miei
tells her
compagni
experiences,
siamo
and she says, with
stati
my
fusi
first
in
companions,
uno.
we were
E questo
molded together
è
into
molto,
one.
molto interessante.
And this is very
Molto
interesting
interessante
because
perché qui c'è una nuova
here
concezione
there is
ontologica, a
a
mio
new
avviso,
ontological
ontologia
conception,
sociale,
in my view. This
perché
is social
ehm,
ontology,
per lei, diciamo, ci sono tutti e
because
due i
for
movimenti,
her
arrivare
there
all'unità
are
dalla
both movements
diversità come un
reaching unity
cammino,
from diversity
ma
as a
poi più
path, but
importante è
then
per
more
lei
important for
partire
her is
dall'unità.
to stem, to start
Possiamo notare subito
unity.
all'inizio che questo non
We
è
immediately
necessariamente
note
una
that
unità
this is not
di perfezione,
necessarily a
no?
unity of
Dove
perfection,
c'è tutto Dio,
where all
ma
of God is
sempre capire
present,
cosa
but
significa
it's
partire
important to
all'unità.
understand what it means to
Diciamo, i
start, to
latini hanno
stem
detto
from
che
unity.
c'è questo cammino e
It has been
plurimus
said
unum.
that there
E
is
tu
the
trovi
concept of
questo
a plurimus unum
nel
from this
slogan
path.
dei Stati
This
Uniti,
is part of the
nella
United States coat of
Unione
arms
Europea, da
and
molti diventare
European
uno.
Union as well, to become one
E
from
qui
many.
c'è un'altra concezione che
And here is
propone
another
la Lubick,
conception which Chiara
partire
Lubick
dall'uno
proposes,
e
starting
diventare
from the one and
tanti,
becoming
diversi.
pure,
Allora,
many
cerchiamo
different
di
ones.
capire. Noi, dico
So we
solo
need to
brevemente,
understand in
nel
brief
XX
that
secolo
in the
abbiamo
20th
contemplato
century
diversi
we
modelli oppure
contemplated a
famiglie di
range of
concettualizzazione della
models,
comunicazione.
families
Un
of
modello
conceptualization of
trasmissivo
communication.
dice
A
che
transmissive
la
model
comunicazione è
tells us that
praticamente
communication
trasmissione di
practically
informazione da
is
una
a
fonte
transmission of
al
information
destinatario,
from one
dove
source
questo è
to
il
the
classico modello
recipient.
retorico,
And this is a
dove
classic
chi parla ha una
rhetorical model where those speaking
funzione, un ruolo
have
attivo e chi riceve
an
è
active
piuttosto
role and
passivo.
function, and
Poi
those who
siamo
receive
passati
are
alla
passive.
grande scoperta della
Then we moved on to the
interattività,
great discovery
dove
of
c'è piuttosto
interactivity,
anche,
where
diciamo,
there is
chi ascolta
where
ha un
those who
ruolo
listen
importante,
also have an
viene fuori
important
l'arte
role,
dell'ascolto,
and the art
della
of listening
comprensione
comes about,
dell'altro,
the art of understanding others,
si allarga
and
lo
this
spettro
widens
dell'interpretazione
the
in
scope
quanto
of
non è
interpretation
comunicazione soltanto
in
ciò che
that
viene
not
trasmesso
only what is
intenzionalmente, ma
intentionally
anche tutto
broadcast
quello che è
is
percepito,
information, but
no?
everything else
Come
which
tale,
is
proprio il linguaggio
perceived
del
as
corpo,
such
eccetera.
as body
Allora,
language and much
queste
more.
azioni
So
reciproche nella
these reciprocal
comunicazione
actions in
hanno avviato
communication
tutto un
have
paradigma di
set
pensiero
up a whole
relazionale,
paradigm of
oppure
relational
tutta la
thought,
conoscenza umana
and a range
sarebbe in
of
questa
human
prospettiva
knowledge would be
discorsiva.
part of
Va
this
bene? E questo è un
discursive
grande tesoro
perspective.
della
This is a
scoperta. Io
great
credo che
treasure,
tanti
I believe.
contributi
I
nostri si
think that
muovono in
many
questa direzione
contributions of
e
ours
anche la
move
vendita
in
della
this
Lubick
direction,
si può
and the legacy of Chiara Lubick can
leggere in
also be read
questa prospettiva, già che
according
lei
to
parla
this
dei
outlook,
rapporti
as
della Trinità che voi
she speaks
conoscete
about
bene, no?
Trinitarian
Che è tutto
relations, which I'm sure
relazionale.
you knew
Allora,
well and you know well. This
io
is
mi
all
fermo
relational.
adesso un attimo
I'm now going
per
to stop
analizzare
a
il
moment
concetto
in
della
order to
comunicazione, perché
analyze the concept
tradizionalmente
of
abbiamo due
communication,
termini che vengono
because
dal
traditionally
latino,
we have two Latin terms.
comunio
One
e
is communio
comunicazione.
and communication.
Allora, il comunio praticamente
communal
uno stato
is a
di una comunità.
status
Qui non
of
si muove,
a
ma si
community.
descrive
It's
uno stato
not
di
a
unità
dynamic,
oppure
it's a
di un
state
legame
of unity.
profondo
It's a
condiviso tra
deep
le
link
persone.
which is shared amongst
Ehm,
people.
Praticamente dove si trova
Practically,
l'identità personale,
where personal
dove ci sono
identity
credenze
lies,
condivise
where there
e
are
così via.
shared beliefs, and so on.
Praticamente tutti i membri di una
All
comunità
the
sono
members
connessi in un
are
modo
linked up
significativo.
in a
La
significant manner.
comunicazione, invece, è
Communication
un atto di
instead
condividere, di
is an act of
trasmettere, di
sharing, of
impartire qualcosa
transmitting, of
da una persona
suffering
all'altra, da un
something from
gruppo
one person
all'altro.
to another, to
Allora,
a group
qui ci
to the
sono
next.
scambio di idee.
And this is an
In
exchange of
sostanza,
ideas.
comunio
Basically,
riguarda lo
communio
stato
is
d'essere.
about
Se
a
volete,
state of
l'unità, di essere
being, a
uniti
state of being
della comunità, mentre
unified, united,
comunicazione
of community,
riguarda
whereas
un
communication
atto di condivisione,
pertains
una
to an act
transizione fra
of
due
sharing,
atti.
a
Ok?
transition
Allora,
between two
c'è
acts, all right?
la differenza
So
nel linguaggio
there
di
is
Chiara
a
Lubick
difference in
tra
Chiara
farsi
Lubig's
uno
message between
e essere
being
uno.
one and
Allora, qui è
becoming
molto
one.
importante per noi capire
And
cosa
it's
significa
important for us to
questa roba,
understand
perché
what
questo è il
this means,
modello, in
because
questo modo,
this
di
model in this
evolutivo, se
way is
volete,
an
quello
evolution,
di
if you like,
crescita e
and it's a
trasformazione,
model of
perché
growth
studia
and transformation,
come si
in
passa
that
da
it
uno stato di
studies
comunione
how we
che
move
non
on
è
from
del
a
tutto
state of
soddisfacente in
communion,
qualche modo,
which is
in uno
not
stato
entirely
di comunione
satisfactory,
2
to
che è
one
più
which is
soddisfacente.
more satisfactory,
Allora,
where we have two
ehm,
people and it's more
cosa è che
satisfactory.
si trasmette? Cosa è che
How is
fa
this
la
transmitted?
comunione?
What does communion
Molto
do?
interessante che nella
It's
definizione della
interesting to note
comunicazione
that in the
c'è la parola
definition of
munus, che è
communication,
un
there is the
bene.
word munus, which means
Condividiamo
an
beni,
asset, a
beni
good,
simbolici,
and we
spirituali, ma
therefore
anche materiali.
trade
E questa
assets,
visione
spiritual, symbolic, materials,
contempla i beni,
and this
beni
includes
che si condividono.
the
E
assets
qui
which we share,
diciamo, c'è una comunanza
and
tra
there
beni
is
materiali e
a coming
spirituali.
together between material
Si può
and
dire, per
spiritual goods.
esempio,
For
che
example, we
la
could say
capacità di
that the
capirsi in un
ability to
dialogo
understand one another
dipende
in a
dallo
dialogue
stato di condivido
depends
dei
on
beni
the state of
materiali. Si
sharing
può
of
dire,
material
non vi
assets.
capite?
So
Ora
if you don't
guardate se voi vivete la
understand
comunione
each
dei
other,
beni.
let's
Allora,
see if you are
questa è
sharing
la
your assets.
partecipazione allo stesso
This is
munus,
participation
che
to the same
praticamente
munus, which
l'ultima
practically
punta, secondo la
uh,
Lubick, si trova in Dio.
the
E,
final point of arrival is,
scrive
according to Chiara
Agostino,
Lubick, in
fides
God.
comunicare,
Agostino
comunem
says,
rem
"Vides
tuam
comunicare
facere
comunem rem
cumilo
tuum
continuum
facere
est. Ora qui
continuate."
l'accento è su
So the
res,
accent is on
che non è un
res,
simbolo, le cose che tu
the things
condividi, i
which you
beni
share,
che
the
tu
assets
condividi.
which you share.
Guardate, e non vado avanti
And I won't
anche nella
move
concezione
on
della,
even
della,
in the
della persona di Cristo, dove c'è
conception of the
la
person
parte
of Christ,
divina,
where there
la
is the
caratteristiche divine e umane che sono
divine
in uno,
characteristics, and
diciamo la
this is
tradizione
in
cristiana
one with human
riferisce a
characteristics. There is a Christian
comunicazio.
tradition
Allora,
which speaks about
qui abbiamo
communicatio.
l'importanza
And
di
here there
studiare
is the
gli
importance
stati,
of
diversi stati,
studying the
i
various
passaggi come
states, the
crescita.
various
Abbiamo un modello
stages
di crescita,
of
come si
growth.
passa
We
da uno
have a
stato
growth
di
model.
unione
How do we go
a uno
from a
stato di
state
unione
of
più
union
perfetta,
to one which is
condividendo
more
il
perfect?
munus,
By
i
sharing
beni,
the munus,
risorse,
the
capacità,
assets, the resources,
che
the
non sono
capacities,
solo parole.
which are not
E
just
credo che
words in our
questo è
case.
ancora un po'
I
astratto, ma
believe
io
that
devo
this
finire.
may remain a
Avremo
little
magari
abstract,
la
but I need to
possibilità di
end.
avere,
Perhaps we will
di
have the
approfondire questo
opportunity
approccio.
to go in
Io ho
depth
fatto
with
un'analisi
this approach.
concettuale,
This
ma
is a conceptual
la
analysis,
psicologia
but
evolutiva
the
come
evolutional
si è,
psychology
evidenzia molto questo
highlights
approccio. Grazie per
this approach a
l'ascolto.
lot. Thank you for your kind attention.
Grazie. Grazie mille.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Molto, molto provocativo.
Very deep,
Come si passa ad uno
thought-provoking
stato di
idea.
comunione più
How do we move
soddisfacente?
from how do we move on to
Wow.
a state of more satisfying
Non vi
communion?
capite?
Well, if you don't understand one
Misurate.
another, we need to measure these
il
things,
livello della vostra
to measure the
condivisione,
level of our
comunicazione che
sharing,
produce beni,
communication producing assets.
molto molto provocativo.
Very
Grazie.
interesting indeed. Thank you.
Allora, il nostro
So
prossimo
our
contributo
next contribution
ci viene offerto da
comes
José
to us
Antonio Faro,
by José Antonio Faro,
giornalista e insegnante di
a
teoria
journalist
della
and professor of
comunicazione e
theory of
antropologia del dialogo
communication and
all'università
anthropology of dialogue
al
at
centro
the
universitario ACES Unitas,
ACES Unitas University
Curitiba,
Center
no,
at Curitiba,
Caruaru in
no, Caruaru
Brasile,
in Brazil.
dottorando in ontologia
A
trinitaria,
PhD student
teologia e
in
Istituto
Trinitary
Universitario Sofia,
Ontology at Sophia,
Master in Scienze delle
Master
Religioni,
in
Pontificia
Science of Religion
Università di
at
São
the
Paulo.
Pontifical University of
Ambito di
São Paulo.
ricerca,
The
antropologia
context of
trinitaria
research
del
is Trinitary
dialogo.
Anthropology
A
of
te la
Dialogue.
parola,
Over
José.
to you, José.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Hello, everyone.
Buonasera a tutte e a
Good
tutti.
evening, good morning.
Buongiorno.
Bene, continuiamo sulla pista
I
aperta
will
dal
continue
professore Palmi,
after
molto
following what
interessanti,
Professor
che è nella
said
linea
before me,
del
which is
pensiero e
along
della
the
prassi di Chiara
lines of
Lubich
the
nella
thought and the practice
comunicazione
of Chiara Lubick in
e nel mio
communication,
caso più
and in my
specificamente
case more
della
specifically
comunicazione
in
come dialogo.
communication as a
Allora
dialogue.
io darò alcuni spunti di
I
quello
will
che
give a
possiamo
few ideas
considerare
about what we
l'antropologia
can
del
consider
dialogo
to be the
nel pensiero
anthropology
di
of
Chiara.
dialogue
Naturalmente
in
sono
Chiara's
solo
thought.
spunti.
Naturally, these are just general ideas.
Bene, è noto
Very
noi
good.
che
It is
studiamo il
known
pensiero di
for us
Chiara
who
che lei
study
non ha
the
mai
thought of Chiara
sviluppato un studio
that she
sistematico
never
sulla
developed a
comunicazione. Lei ha
systematic study
scritto,
on
ha detto
communication. She
delle
wrote,
cose
she said some
interessanti,
things about communication
provocative,
and
però non
thought-provoking
era la
ideas,
sua
but
funzione
her
studiare,
function
no,
was not
la
that of
comunicazione.
studying communication.
Tuttavia, dal suo
However,
cammino
from
spirituale,
her spiritual path,
lei ha prodotto
she
ampio materiale,
produced
anche
a lot of
scritto, sulla
material,
sua
including
visione
written material,
dell'uomo
on her
come essere
vision of
relazionale,
man as
secondo
a
l'immagine di
relational
Dio, come ha
being
già
according
detto
to the
così
likeness
bene il
of joy
professore
of
Palmi,
God, as
all'immagine di
Professor said
Dio
before me, the image
unitrinitario.
of God, a
E è proprio in
unitrinitary
questa
God.
specifica
And it is in this
antropologia che è
specific
stata
anthropology,
definita da
which was
diversi
divided by
studiosi
many scholars
antropologia
as
trinitaria
Trinitary
e che secondo il
anthropology,
teologo
and
italiano
which,
Piero
according
Coda,
to the
può
Italian
essere
theologian Piero
riassunto nel
Coda, can be
concetto di
summarized
persona
in
in
the concept
reciprocità
of
e
person in
risiede il
reciprocity.
contributo più grande di
This is where
Chiara
the greatest
all'ambito
contribution of
generale della
Chiara
comunicazione
resides
del
within
dialogo.
the general context of communication and
Per
dialogue.
Coda, il
For
pensiero e la
Coda,
spiritualità
the
di
thought and
Chiara non
spirituality
solo
of Chiara not
testimoniano
only
un cambio
witness
di
a
paradigma
paradigm shift
nella storia della
in the
spiritualità cristiana,
history
ci
of
sono
Christian
diversi studi
spirituality,
in
there are
questo
many
ambito,
studies
ma
in this sense,
pongono tutte le
but they
premesse per
place
un
all the
contributo
premises for a
significativo
significant
al
contribution
cambiamento
to
di
the
paradigma
cultural
culturale
paradigm
della
shift
nostra
of
epoca.
our
In un
time,
momento ormai
in a
travagliato, esige
moment
con
which
urgenza,
is
comincia a
a
prevedere e
difficult one
configurare
and
in modi
which
diversi e
needs
perfino contraddittori.
to which
In
begins to
questo
configure
contesto, la
in
visione
diverse
dell'uomo
way
di Chiara
and
è
contradictory
riconosciuta
ways
come
this paradigm. In
una
this sense,
risposta
the vision
originale
of
alla crisi
man that Chiara
antropologica
has
del
is
nostro
recognized
tempo.
as an original response to the
La carità
anthropological crisis in
reciproca
our
che
time.
unì Chiara e le
Mutual
sue prime
charity, which
compagne
united
nel
Chiara to
contesto
her
delle
first
espressioni
companions in the
materiali e
context of material
spirituali
and
della
spiritual
Seconda Guerra
destruction of the
Mondiale,
Second World War,
li introdusse in
introduced
una
them
realtà
in a
esistenziale
determining
determinante.
existential realm.
L'amore è
Love
l'unica
is the
realtà che non
only
passa.
dimension that
Da
does
questa
not pass.
comprensione, Chiara ha
From this understanding, Chiara
potuto
was
penetrare
able
il
to
contenuto
penetrate
evangelico
within
della
the
rivelazione del
evangelical
Dio di Gesù
content of
Cristo
the
come
revelation
agape,
of the God of
comunione
Jesus
e
Christ as
dell'umanità come
agape
famiglie
communion
e
and
figli di
humanity
Dio,
as a family
pertanto
of
famiglia di
children of God,
fratelli.
and therefore
La vita
brothers
della
and sisters.
Trinità
The life of the Trinity,
si è configurata
therefore,
dunque
was
come il luogo
configured as a
ermeneutico a
hermeneutical
partire dal
space,
quale Chiara ha
starting
interpretato
from
tutta
which
la
Chiara
realtà umana.
interpreted the
In
entirety of human
termini
reality. In
antropologici, ciò
anthropological
significa
terms,
che
this
oltre al
means that,
rapporto
as well as the
io-tu, esiste
I-you
un'altra componente
relationships, there is
costitutiva
another constituent
dell'identità dell'essere
component in
umano,
the identity of the human being, the communion between the I and the you, the communion which comes about when the I, you are expressed together. When together, they form a new dimension, which is the us. Therefore, for the author, man truly fulfills their personal identity only when they are in a Trinitarian relationship with others. Some anthropological categories outlined from the Trinitary lifestyle, which Enrique Cambon, sociologist and a theologian from Argentina, tried to identify through 4 word associations. This can help to better explain the characteristics of this person in reciprocity, always with the unique Trinitarian life of God as a paradigm. The first association is relationality and personalization. Lubick writes, as God is love, the persons of the Trinity are themselves in relation with the others. That means every person of the Trinity is identified in their identity of love, in the gift of giving themselves to other persons. And this is the way they constitute in their identity. I am what I am because I relate to others. From an anthropological point of view, this means, as Lubick says, that we own what we give. What we give is what makes us be. Because she writes, only love is. The act of love which gives life to others is the same one giving existence to those who donate, to those who carry out this act of love. Through this, both are distinguished without separating themselves. And hence, this is important paradox which we identify in the Trinitary lifestyle. The person is only themselves in relation to others. They are unity with others. The second word association, which is another paradox, which is unity and distinction. Previously, we have called attention on the fact that a person is him or herself when they gift themselves to others. That is to say, we cast attention on the fact that a person is relationship. However, we can see the same dimension in the opposite perspective. That is, everyone is themselves if they ensure that others are themselves, which means that in God, the way of living out unity needs to be necessarily Trinitarian. Trinity is the way in which God is one. If it follows the Trinitary model, unity needs to necessarily make the various identities in the game of relation grow. That means to include and give value to otherness. Trinitarian life, therefore, means also opposition, in the sense that everybody is themselves without being the other one. This is the second paradox of a Trinitary lifestyle, unity in distinction. The third paradox is voiding and fulfillment of self. Trinitary life requires that every person is available to love in the measure of God's love. For Lubick, there can be no Trinitary unity without the mutual voiding, emptiness, without getting lost in each other's love for other. However, always following the logic of the Trinitary God, those who completely void themselves for love return to themselves fully fulfilled in their identity. And the last one, reciprocity and identity. Following the same logic of the previous word association, we reach other conclusions. It's not enough to be with others in order to live according to the Trinitary lifestyle, nor is it enough to live for others, but we need reciprocity with which each partner in the relationship tries to fully live out the dimension of the other. And this is where we find a further paradox of Trinitary life, to allow that we find the same fullness in each of the distinct realities in relation,
José,
united by mutual love.
scusa l'interruzione.
Sorry to
Non so
interrupt
se
you.
riesci a
I'm not
concludere,
sure
siamo
whether we
fuori
can
tempo.
reach conclusions because, yes, I'm about to
Grazie.
close. Thank you. This means that when there is Trinitarian unity in many dimensions, each one bears within not a part of the fullness of all, but fullness in its entirety. Everybody has everyone in themselves. Thank you very much.
Grazie. Persona in reciprocità.
Person in
L'umanità,
reciprocity,
famiglia di
humanity
fraternità.
and family of
Rapporto
fraternity.
io-tu
Relationship between the
deve
I
generare
and the you
comunione,
must
che
generate
nasce
communion, which
quando
comes
io
about
e tu
when
forma
I
noi.
and you form an
Relazionalità.
us.
La persona è
Relationship.
solo se unita agli
Person
altri.
is a person
Potente.
only if unified to others.
Grazie.
This is very powerful. Thank
Grazie
you
davvero.
very much.
E per concludere questo primo momento del nostro
And to
pomeriggio,
conclude this
il prossimo
first
contributo ci
part
viene da
of
Carla
this
Cotignoli,
session, the next
giornalista
contribution comes from Carla
professionista
Cotignoli, a
e
professional
radiogiornale di Radio Vaticana per
journalist.
oltre 20 anni,
She
una
has
lunghissima
been working in the
esperienza
Vatican Radio
fruttuosa.
for more than 20 years. Then she
Capufficio
was
stampa di Chiara Lubic per
the
tanti
person
anni,
responsible
dagli
of the
anni
press office of Chiara Lubic
1996 al
from
2011,
1996 to
membro della
2011.
Commissione centrale di Net One
Member of the Central Commission of Net
dagli
One
inizi
since
fino
the very
al
beginning until
2011, fa parte del
2011.
gruppo
And now
della
she is
comunicazione della scuola ABBA,
part of the
Centro
group
Studi
of communication of the
Interdisciplinari
ABBA School,
Internazionale del Movimento dei
International
Focolari.
Interdisciplinary Study
Carla,
Center
a
of
te.
the
Grazie.
Focolari Movement, and I give the floor to you.
Il tuo microfono.
But please switch on your
Hai
microphone.
richiuso.
We cannot hear you.
Ecco, adesso sì.
Allora, prima di tutto ringrazio
So first of all, I want
per
to
tutti gli
thank
interventi di
for
ieri e di
all the
oggi,
interventions of
molto
yesterday
ricchi e
and
importanti.
today, very
Il mio non è
rich and
frutto di uno
important.
studio accademico come sono stati i precedenti,
My paper is
ma
not
è
the
un po'
fruit
il
of an
frutto di un
academic study,
lavoro
but
in
rather the
corso
fruit of a
nell'archivio di
work in
Net One,
progress in the
perché in fase di
archives of Net
riordino,
One, because we are reordering
di digitalizzare tutto
the
questo
papers. We
materiale.
are
Entrando in questo
digitalizing all the
lavoro, in questa full
material.
immersion, mi ha fatto
In this full
riscoprire
immersion, I
durante 2 anni
rediscovered
quale
after
patrimonio
years
immenso,
what an
culturale ed
immense
esperienziale
cultural and
che è
experiential
stato prodotto
heritage
in quegli anni.
was
E mi sembra
produced
che è
in
un
those
patrimonio da cui
years,
ancora si
and I think
può
this is a
attingere
heritage from
molto.
which we can
Qui
draw,
ripercorro
still draw a lot.
soltanto alcune
I
tappe
will only go
e
through
do soltanto
some
qualche flash.
stages
Allora,
with some flashes.
siamo nel 25esimo di Net One, nasce il 2
This is the
giugno
21st
2000.
anniversary
La sua
of
storia, come
Network,
abbiamo
which was born
sentito
in
anche da
June
vari
of the year
interventi, si
2000.
intreccia con la storia,
And its
con la vita di
history is
Chiara Lubic.
intertwined with the life of
Sempre
Chiara
di più è
Lubic.
chiaro che c'è nella sua vita
It is clear that in
nelle
Chiara's life
sue produzioni
and in
letterarie, eccetera,
Chiara's
è come un alfabeto, una
production, there is an
grammatica
alphabet, a
insita nella
grammar
comunicazione che ha dato
inherent
vita
in
a Net
the
One.
communication
E c'è
that
ancora tanto da
gave
esplicitare,
birth to
anche se
Net
già
One,
tanto
and there is
spiegato.
yet
Allora,
much
queste
to
radici
be explained.
risalgono agli anni 40.
So its roots go back to the
Il titolo
beginning of
del
the
nostro
1940s. The
incontro
title
oggi
of our
recita
meeting reads
Togetherness,
Togetherness,
Communication
Communication and Media
È una
for
formula
Peace.
che ha avuto già una
This
prima
formula
sperimentazione proprio
had
in
its
quegli
first
anni della guerra
experimentation
mondiale.
right in the
E nel cuore
years
di quel tempo
where there was the Second World
conoscono
War.
bene questa storia. Comunque, di quel tempo
Many people
carico di odio e
already know
violenza che
very
Dio si è
well this
mostrato a Chiara
story.
come amore.
And it
E per
was in the
lei
time full of
un'esperienza
hatred and violence that
totalizzante
God
cambia la
showed
vita.
himself to
Qui si può
Chiara
vedere
as
una foto
love.
di Chiara proprio di quei tempi.
And
Se si può
and this
condividere.
experience changed her life. Here we can see a picture of Chiara.
Non so se è pronta. Sì.
I don't know if you can see it.
Ecco. E cambia la vita di Chiara.
So
e
this
in quel tempo senza
experience
futuro,
changed Chiara's
Chiara aveva
life.
colto come un mandato questo
In that
vivere
time,
e
without a
ricomporre
future,
l'unità della famiglia umana. Si apriva
the
l'orizzonte di
horizon
una
of a
fraternità
universal
universale. Forte in
brotherhood
Chiara la spinta a
opened up
comunicare
to
questa
her.
esperienza. Ecco,
And
qui
Chiara had
vediamo
a
che la
strong drive to
comunicazione
share this
con tutti i
experience
poveri mezzi di allora
with
che
all the
aveva allora a
means she
disposizione,
had
di persona a
available at
persona,
that
con
time,
lettere, i primi
person to
articoli,
person, the
con un
letters, the
ritmo
first
veramente
articles.
vorticoso. Era una comunicazione di parole, ma quali
It was a
parole? Le parole
saying
del
that
Vangelo,
became
sostanziate di
giving.
amore, fatte
They were the
vita.
words of the
Era
gospel
un
made
dire che
life.
diventava dare,
So this saying became
generava nei
giving.
fatti una
It was a
alternativa e una
generative
contestazione
communication
all'odio e alla violenza.
that
Il tessuto
went
sociale
against the
dilacerato si
hatred and
componeva in
violence.
comunità. Questa comunicazione generativa ha
And
segnato la fondazione e la
this
diffusione nei
generative
continenti
communication
del
marked the
movimento
foundation,
chiamato ad
spread,
essere
and
portatori di
dissemination of the
pace
Focolare
ed
movement
unità, il
across the
movimento dei
continents
focolari, lo
and
sappiamo, e non
beyond. The
solo.
movement
Della
called
forza generativa di
to
questa comunicazione ne parlerà
talk about
Chiara
unity.
stessa
And
negli
Chiara
eventi
herself
pubblici che
spoke
si
about
sono
it in the public
moltiplicati
events that
a
multiplied
partire dagli
since the
anni
end
90.
of the
Nel
1990s.
marzo
In
1995
March
l'Unione Editori
1995,
Librai
the
Cattolici
Italian
Italiani
Catholic, the
attribuisce
Union of
alla
Italian Catholic
Lubic il
Publishers
premio
and
Autore
Booksellers
dell'anno per la sua
awarded
attività
Chiara
e
Lubick the
scrittrice. 2 anni
Author of the
dopo, nel
Year Award
97,
for her work as
riceve
a
il
writer.
dottorato honoris
2 years
causa in
later, in January
comunicazione sociale
1997, she
alla
received
St.
an
John
honorary
University
doctorate
di
in social
Bangkok per i
communication
suoi
from St.
meriti
John's
nell'uso
University in
delle nuove
Bangkok,
telecomunicazioni e
Thailand, for her
tecnologie
merits
dei
in the
media.
use of new communications
Chiara,
and
visto
media
questo
technologies.
interesse, pensa
Chiara
subito ad un congresso
therefore immediately
internazionale
thought of an
che si
international
svolgerà nell'anno
congress
2000.
that
Chiara
took
ne segue
place
passo
in the year
passo, visto
2000.
il plico di
Chiara
lettere
followed the
della
preparation of this
corrispondenza in questa
congress
fase
step
di
by step.
preparazione. Nel titolo del congresso è già
And the
espressa la chiave
title of the
innovativa,
congress
veramente
already
innovativa
expressed
per il
the
mondo della comunicazione.
innovative idea,
Comunicazione e unità, i
communication
media
and
nella
unity, the
prospettiva
media
del
in the
mondo unito.
perspective of a
La
united world.
partecipazione supera ogni
The
previsione. Ricordo che
participation
eravamo rimasti tutti
exceeded
molto
all
sorpresi.
expectations. We were all very
650
surprised.
tra giornalisti, operatori con
650
TV,
people, including
cinema,
journalists,
pubbliche
radio and
relazioni,
television
nuovi
operators,
media che già
film
spuntavano
workers,
nella
public
pubblicità,
relations workers, new media
professionisti,
workers,
studenti, ricercatori della comunicazione,
advertising workers,
alcuni ad
etc.
alto livello come
Some
Sergio
of them
Zavoli.
of a high level, such
Spiccata la
as
nota
Sergio Zavoli.
internazionale,
The
veramente era
international
impressionante dall'Europa,
character was
dall'Est e
strong.
dall'Ovest,
Western and Eastern
Russia
Europe,
compresa,
including Russia,
dall'Asia all'Africa alle
then from Asia
Americhe.
to Africa to
Chiara
the
traccia un
Americas.
discorso
Chiara
fondativo.
outlined the
Per Ron
founding
Austin,
speech
regista e produttore di
from
Hollywood, in
Ron Austin,
quell'evento,
Hollywood
dice, si
director and
sono
producer,
piantati i semi del
wrote that in that
futuro.
event the seeds
Per
of the
Jim
future were
Gallagher,
planted.
giornalista e
And
scrittore
according to Jim
inglese,
Gallagher,
già è stato
a British
determinato
journalist and
un
writer, a
programma su cui
program has already been
riflettere e mettere
outlined
in
to
atto
reflect
sul
on and
campo.
implement in the
Al
field.
termine del congresso,
At the
Chiara
end
stessa
of the
annuncerà la
Congress, Chiara
nascita di
herself
quella rete
announced
di
the birth
comunicatori,
of
come era
that
desiderato
network of
desiderio profondo
communicators,
di tutti,
as it was
che
the
diverrà
desire of all,
permanente.
that will
Al
then
termine di
become
una
permanent.
profonda
At the
riflessione
end of a
sulla
deep
visione e
reflection on
missione di
its
questa
vision,
rete,
on
è
the vision
emerso
and
il
mission
nome
of this
Network,
network,
come
the
sappiamo,
name
rete che fa uno. Il
chosen was
sottotitolo
Network,
lo
network
spiega,
that makes one,
Media and
as the subtitle
Communication for a
explains, media and
United
communication
World,
for a
ed
united world.
incarica una
And
commissione
she
di cui faranno
appointed the
parte 3
commission,
giornalisti, cui
including 3
compresa
journalists,
una
including
rivista
myself,
Rai e una
and a director
Nei
of
suoi
Italian
interventi
National Television Broadcast and an IT
1997
expert.
e 2000
In her
e in
speeches
varie altre
in
occasioni,
1997
Chiara,
and
pur
2000,
incoraggiando l'uso
and
dei
on other
mezzi di
occasions, Chiara,
comunicazione
while
più
encouraging the use
avanzati,
of the
e
most
l'ho fatto con lo
advanced
specialissimo coi
means of
giovani, non
communication,
ha mancato mai
and
di
especially with young
evidenziare
people, never
che il
failed to
primo mezzo
highlight
di
that the most
comunicazione è
essential
la
means of
persona.
communication is the person.
Parlava di uomini nuovi,
She spoke of
imbevuti di
new
quella
men and
spiritualità
women
che da
imbued with that
Dio porta
spirituality
al
that
noi,
leads from the
un
I
noi che
to the
attraverso i
we,
media
from the
raggiunge
self to the
dimensioni
we,
mondiali.
and we that
Nel suo
reach the
premura
global
nel
dimension through the
2001
media. In
dare il via a
2001,
Roma
she
ad
took care
una
to launch in
originale
Rome an
formula
original
per la
formula
formazione e
for
il
training and
dialogo
dialogue
tra professionisti e
addressed to
studenti che si
professionals and
ripeterà
students
ogni mese
that
sino al
will be repeated
2007.
every month
Gli
until
ingredienti erano una
2007.
grandissima
The
novità
ingredients
e
were
spiritualità
very new.
comunicata dai testimoni degli
Spirituality,
inizi,
communicated by
voleva che
witnesses of
fosse
the beginning,
autentica al
and Chiara
massimo,
wanted that to be very
riflessione
authentic. Then
teorico-applicativa,
theoretical
buone
applicative
pratiche.
reflection and good
L'esperimento
practices.
anche qui supera
The
le
experiment
previsioni. Incomincia a
also,
prendere
again
corpo il
exceeded
progetto di
expectations.
Nettuano.
The Net One
Sarà
project
questo il
began to take
titolo del
shape.
volume che
This will be the
raccoglie i
title of the
testi.
volume that
Si
collected
risveglia in
the
molti la
texts.
convinzione.
The
Carla,
conviction that it
Sì,
is possible to live.
siamo
sì,
arrivati.
scusa, se puoi andare alla conclusione, sì, per favore. Siamo già fuori tempo, sì.
Bene, che è
You're out of
possibile
time.
vivere la
The
professione in
conviction that
modo
it is possible to
diverso
live the
nonostante i
profession
pesanti
of journalists in a different way
condizionamenti.
despite
Poi
the
dopo ci
heavy
sono
conditioning
vari
is
congressi che si
reawakened
sviluppano
in many
sempre di
people.
più
Then many more
a
congresses took
dimensione
place
sia come qualifica degli informatori sia come
to
diffusione
qualify
di contenuti
the
e arriviamo alla
participants in terms
fine.
of content,
E
and
alla
I
fine
get to my
è questo.
conclusion, and this is
L'importante è
my
avere
conclusion. It is important
questo
to
obiettivo.
have this
Chiara vedeva
purpose.
lo sviluppo
Chiara
dei
saw the
media
development
come
of the media
provvidenziale proprio
as
per
providential in order
contribuire
to
all'unità del mondo.
contribute to the
E
unity of the
qui
world.
vediamo la foto
And here we
ultima
see the last picture.
che sorprende, insomma, che nel giardino di casa sua
And
aveva
in her
installato una
garden,
parabolica, ormai non
she
più
installed
usata,
a
però che era stata usata nei
parabolic
collegamenti
antenna
internazionali
that
per i
was
grandi
used in
eventi.
international
E lei l'ha
link-ups for
definita
the
il
big events.
monumento
And she
per il mondo
defined it
unito.
the monument for a united world. And this
Grazie.
is the end.
Grazie Carla,
Thank you,
bellissimo
Carla.
questi passi
Beautiful
nella
this
nostra storia. Mi è piaciuto come già dall'inizio
summary
tu
of
dici in
our
realtà
history. I like how at
quello
the
che
beginning you
stiamo
said,
facendo
in
noi
fact, what
oggi
we are doing
ha le
today
radici da questa
has its
esperienza
roots in
degli
this
inizi che
experience of the beginning.
è bellissimo.
So it is
Grazie, grazie
very, very
davvero,
good.
ringraziamo
Thank you
tutti
very
per la
much. We
pazienza
thank everyone for your patience,
dell'ascolto
for your
e adesso se
listening.
possiamo trovarci nei
And
nostri
now
gruppi
we can meet
linguistico,
in
il gruppo
linguistic
linguistico, ognuno
groups.
entra
Everyone can
nel
enter
gruppo della propria
the
lingua
group of their own
e staremo
language, and
insieme
we can
per
be
una
together
condivisione di tutto ciò
for
che
sharing
abbiamo
of
ascoltato fino
everything we
adesso
listened
e ci
to so
ritroviamo
far, and
tra
we'll meet
una mezz'oretta,
in
diciamo alle
half an hour. So
15:50,
at
16 meno 10 ci
10 to
ritroviamo tutti
4,
insieme.
we'll meet
Allora,
all together.
buona condivisione,
So have a
buona
good
condivisione a tutti.
sharing to all of you.
Aspettiamo di avere che ognuno abbia
10
potuto
minutes passed by,
consumare,
and
muoversi,
we
fare il
hope
caffè,
that
mate,
you
tè,
could prepare a
per
coffee, a
poter
mate, or a
continuare
tea,
questo ultimo
and
blocco.
continue this
Grazie,
last
veramente
block.
non ho detto, ma prima ci hanno detto anche che questa condivisione nei gruppi
I was also
per
said
lingue sono stati così
that
molto
this
profondo e
sharing
arricchenti
in
anche, allora
blocks
aspettiamo questo di poter continuare.
were fruitful, and so we
blocco e
hope we
poter chiudere
can
anche
have
con un
concentration also
nuovo
in the second
incontro.
block, and we can
Allora per
conclude
questo
with another
passiamo
meeting.
la
So
parola
that's
a
for
José Arana, che
I
lui
give the floor to José
farà il
Aranas,
coordinatore di questo
who will
nuovo panel.
coordinate this new panel.
Buonasera,
Good evening.
sono José Aranas, un
My name is José
giornalista
Aranas. I'm a
filipino.
Filipino
Adesso
journalist.
sono a Tagaytay,
I am in
nelle Filippine,
Tagaytay,
dall'altro lato del mondo, molto
that is
lontano
the other
dall'Europa e
side
America
of
Latina.
the world in comparison
E
to
adesso è quasi
Europe
mezzanotte
or
qua
Americas. It is
e
almost
si vede
midnight
molto
here,
chiaro la luna, le
and we
stelle
can
davanti
still
un vulcano di
clearly
Taal,
see
un panorama
the
molto scenico,
moon and the
molto bello.
stars in front of the
Buonasera a
volcano
tutti.
I have in front.
Siamo
So,
quasi
good evening,
nell'ultima tappa del
everyone.
nostro
We
incontro.
are in the last
Adesso saremo con alcuni
segment of
colleghi
our
di
meeting.
network
Now
e anche nel mondo
we'll
del
be with our
giornalismo. In
colleagues
questo
of
panel di
journalism. In
giornalismo
this panel about
dialogico e
journalism
comunicazione
and
responsabile. Il
dialogic
nostro primo
journalism and
panelista
responsible communication. The
lo
first
conosciamo quasi noi, tutti
member
noi,
of panelists,
Michele
most of
Sanzucchi,
us
un
know him,
giornalista,
Michele
scrittore
Zanzucchi, a
con studi in
journalist
economia e
and a writer
commercio
with studies
da
in
Roma, da Sapienza,
trade
e poi teologia a Parigi,
and
Institut
commercial
Catholic,
studies, also theology in
filosofia a
Paris
Parigi,
and
Sorbona, Centre
philosophy,
des Hébreux.
as well
Per
as
10 anni
communication.
direttore
All of
delle
it in
riviste
Paris. He has been for 10
Supernova,
years a
ha
director of
pubblicato
the
una
Italian edition
settantina di
of
libri,
New City or Living City. He
insegna
published about
mass
60 books.
mediologia
He
all'Istituto
teaches mass
Universitario
mediology
Sofia
at
di
the
Loppiano,
Sophia University Institute in Loppiano,
Firenze, è socio
near Florence, and
fondatore
he is a
dell'associazione Net1. Con essa
founder,
vorremmo
one of the founders
ascoltarci.
of
Michele, a te
Net1.
la
So
parola.
I give the
Grazie
floor
José,
to
felice di essere qui con
Michele.
tutta la famiglia di
So very
Net1.
happy to
Da
be here with
25
the
anni,
whole
non
family
so
of
che numero di congresso
Net1.
è questo, sarà
I
il
don't
20,
know,
25,
it
che
is
sa.
maybe the
Comunque
20th or
siamo
25th
sempre nuovi e
25th
è
Congress of
interessante
Netran,
vedere che ci si rinnova.
but
Grazie a
very
tutti di
interesting to
essere qui.
see that
Dunque
we
vi
are
parlo
always,
brevemente
we always renew
del
ourselves. So we'll
giornalismo dialogico.
talk to
Cos'è il
you
giornalismo
about
dialogico?
dialogical
È uno dei...
journalism. What is this?
Scusate, traduzioni. Ecco, è una delle tante
So
forme
this
di
is one of the
giornalismo
many forms
sociale
of
per la
social
pace, per il
journalism
dialogo,
for
per la
peace
fraternità che sono
and
nate
dialogue
in giro per il
and
mondo. Il fatto che siano tanti dice che c'è
and the
un'esigenza
fact that there are
forte
many
di
of these
giornalismo
says there is a strong need of a
espressione di
journalism
un
that is an
umanesimo
expression of
profondo
a
e
deep
rinnovato
humanism
per le esigenze che le
renewed
società di
for
oggi
the needs
portano.
that today's
Nel,
needs have.
nel 2015-2016
In
ci siamo interrogati con l'allora gruppo board internazionale di Net1 su cosa potevamo
we
fare in un momento in cui c'era emergenza
wondered
delle
with
migrazioni, almeno in
our
Europa.
team what we
Vi
could
ricordate
do
bene
in the
la
field of
situazione.
migration
Ebbene,
in
noi abbiamo
Europe.
deciso di fare un esperimento,
So we
di
decided to
metterci in
make
gioco in prima
an
persona e quindi
experiment,
siamo andati nei
first
luoghi
person.
in
So
cui
we
c'era
went to the places
maggiormente
where there
tensione a
was
proposito
more
delle
tensions
migrazioni. Budapest,
about
Ungheria, ad Atene in Grecia, a
migration.
Varsavia,
Budapest,
siamo andati a
Athens,
Pozzallo
Warsaw.
nell'Italia
We
del
went
Sud
to
dove arrivano le barche
Pozzallo
dalla
in
Libia e
southern
dalla
Europe,
Tunisia,
where the
e
boats
siamo
from Libya and
stati anche più
Tunisia
tardi a Beirut in Libano, in Amman, in Costa d'Avorio e
arrived then
anche a
in Beirut,
Nell'Urabat,
Lebanon, in Man,
Colombia.
Ivory Coast, and
Cosa
in the
volevamo
Colombia
fare?
region of
Alcuni
Urabá.
giornalisti di vari paesi
What
insieme
was our
a
intention? The
operatori dei
journalists from
media,
several countries,
esperti di
together with media
comunicazione,
operators and
politici,
experts of
amministratori,
communication, politicians,
rappresentanti di
administrators,
ONG, accademici,
NGOs,
operatori sociali,
representatives,
volevamo capire come
academics and
comprendere questo
social
macro
workers and
fenomeno e
other
come
experts who wanted to better
lavorarci,
understand the
come
contour of
presentarlo.
this macro phenomenon
Volevamo
migration.
entrare
We
nella
wanted to
prospettiva del
enter
migrante,
into
nella
the
logica
perspective of migrants, into
dell'altro.
the logic of
L'esperienza comune ha
migrants.
portato a
So
un'esperienza
this
professionale
experience
per
brought,
certi versi
brought
inedita,
to
basata sull'ascolto e sull'interesse
unprecedented
reciproco
professional experience based on mutual interest that enabled us to approach all the aspects concerning migration and understand the tragedy from the point of view of its protagonists. After this shared experience, this joint work that brought to productions of different kind in radio, TV, reviews on the web, etc. And after meeting a contrast, in the contrast, for example, we realized that even in Europe, where usually there is quite a cohesion from the Philippines. You look at us as a small part of the world that looks quite united. But this is not the case. There was a fracture provoked by the fall of communism and the crisis of liberalism, and this brought to a lack of understanding between Eastern and Western Europe. That was a topic of discussions and dialogue, because we understood that we have to enter the wounds of humanity and succeed in taking out in our profession and opening an appropriate opening. So what came out was the idea of a dialogical journalism. Working in the Sofia University, we are carrying out the course on dialogical journalism, and in March, a handbook will be issued of dialogical about this topic of dialogical journalism. So what are the main principles that inspire? The first is interdisciplinarity of this project. So journalists cannot be mono, take care of one discipline. First, journalism should avoid ideological interpretations. And these can be done if we put ourselves in the skin, in the shoes of the others. If we are not anchored to the polarizations that condition us. Then, in a moment where there is especially desk journalism, very static, as we like this online meeting that we are doing, very often journalists remain sitting at their desk. No, we have to go on the ground, on the terrain. Then another principle that many images are used. There are the migrants are exposed, but can I look into the eyes of the people I'm talking about even after publishing their photos and after telling their stories? Then another principle, the reading of reality should be synchronic, that is keeping the history of a given country in mind, and diachronic, that is considering overall events and not just local ones. Another one, it is always appropriate to distinguish the different levels of reading in the analysis, religious, political, communication, cultural, etc. Then, in a slimy matter like migration, 4 eyes see better than 2, and 4 hands work better than 2. So journalists are not know-it-all people. So we have to trust people who interpret reality objectively and exhaustively. Then journalists who dialogue cannot confuse this role with do-goodism. The journalism is of peace even when they denounce the structures of sin, where those who exploit people's misery are working. In other words, journalists must be factors of dialogue and not factors of fracture. So very often journalists who do not realize the power of the means we have in our hands. Then here we have the topic of journalist responsibility, both personal and social responsibility. So journalists should act always in a responsible way. So all of these seem more recommendations than principles, but beyond the recommendations there are principles. then in the book that will be published, this will be explained more clearly. Then next June in Sofia University we want to organize a workshop about dialogical journalism applied to interreligious dialogue, because journalism needs to be applied in a specific field. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michele. So, very clear what you said, and very concrete, all the things you said. And I have seen everything you said embodied in you, in your person. And now we can go to the second panelist,
Liliana
Liliana Ingrida Mugombozzi.
Giornalista con laurea in Scienze della Comunicazione per Unice Sud Africa.
A journalist with a degree in Science of Communication and Master in Social Justice and Global Development at the St. John University, New York in Rome. A doctorate in the African Studies Center, Western Cape, South Africa. Cooperates with various magazines and NGOs in Africa, and was a teacher of communicative ability at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa.
Lily,
we listen to your wisdom.
Gracias, Jose.
Thank you, Jose.
I will speak in English. My contribution this afternoon is concerned with the influences of human communication on social, cultural transformations in the digitally disrupted world. The context of the research, the capital cities of the Central African states. The two main aspects of the changes explored are the urbanization and the digital disruption framework. Certainly, it's a contribution that was born from a curiosity, therefore does not have pretense to exhaust the topic under study. It only makes a contribution, an attempt to make a contribution to the current debate. Human communication and urbanization. An important aspect of social change and population growth over the last decades in Central African states is urbanization. According to the United Nations Population Fund, a major consequence of rapid Africa's population growth is the phenomenal growth rate of urban population. According to statistics, during the past generation, urbanization in Africa has increased at a great pace, more than 42% of all population compared with only 8% in 1960s. In fact, there were only 2 cities in the continent with population exceeding 500,000 people. The rise and growth of cities has had important consequences for many aspects of cultural, social, political, economic life of the people. This phenomenon has resulted in a profound reorientation of people's lives, bearing both major challenges and opportunities for actors engaged in all aspects of urban life. So my question was, how do people manage these changes? What are their perceptions? What are their wants? What are their challenges? Number 2, human communication and technology. Technological transformations are part and parcel of the rapid transformation. We heard about it earlier. The pace at which technology is transforming our lives is exponential, and there has been marked difference in the manner in which humans communicate. Elita Abdeleva contend that contemporary forms of mediated communication generate new designs from personal and cultural behavior to the understanding of sociocultural reality, institutions such as family life, education, religion, but also the way people do business, the way their legal systems function, and the manner in which cooperation among different states is conducted. Now, the problem. Human communication through myriad of encounters in the streets, in schools and hospitals, at the marketplace, places of worship in all its forms, and at all levels is critical. This encounter of a human person to a human person is critical. New cultures are constantly being born in these cities, when new languages, symbols, messages, and paradigms propose new approaches to life. How do people view human contacts? Has technology changed us completely? Therefore, understanding the implication of human communication beyond techno-socialization can offer a reading key around which these cities can be reborn, built, grow, and develop. To which extent human communication process influences the interactions between cultural, technological, political, economic, environmental transformations in day-to-day life in African cities. Culture of encounter and social cohesion. Social cohesion is referred to as the glue that holds together society. This according to the United Nations Department of Social Affairs. Social cohesion is referred to as the glue that holds together society. It is the trusting network of relationships and shared values and norms of residents in a neighborhood that allow members to achieve shared well-being. The United Nations Development Program refers to social cohesion as a complex subject, assuming that to date, there's no single definition, even though its theoretical origins are often traced to the early work of theorists like Emile Durkheim and Ferdinand Tönnies. They proposed that social cohesion was an aspect of the quality of life in a society that resulted from solidarity, shared loyalty, and interdependence between people. And from the African perspective, there are parallels between social cohesion and Ubuntu. I think it's a word that most of us heard of. Ubuntu is related to the concept that predate modern theory and include values focused on community, altruism, solidarity, and interdependence. Thus, it could be argued that human communication based on establishing relationship among people that favor encounters, making connection, is in these cities can create cohesion. This fact of meeting the other person, as we've been saying since yesterday, this relationality can create cohesion and have a result, have an impact on common good. In a globalized world like ours, where technology is changing lives, including in Africa, the internet is having a significant impact. There's a study that was made by Pew Review in 2017. A few years have passed since. And they realized that the study found that Africans are now at a crossroad. On one hand, technology is transforming lives. On the other hand, even if people are experiencing positive aspects, there are also some aspects of cultural lives that is being lost. And this is seen like in the way maybe we see traditionally, I mean, cultural events that have deep roots traditionally are being now altered by technology, like celebrations of life, which in Africa is funerals, but also births. But to conclude, there are some good research, funding research, that have found that in spite of these challenges, the human person is yearning for proximity, is yearning for encounter. And therefore, I say, human communication can be sufficiently examined from the rationality viewpoint, relationality viewpoint, be studied to study the amazing happening that takes place when any form of human communication process can be explored and assessed. Thank you.
Grazie, grazie Lili. Si sente molto il
Thank you,
calore
Lily. We can
dell'Africa
hear the warmth of Africa
con
in
questo senso.
this conversation of
Grazie mille.
yours. Thank you very much.
Adesso andiamo al
And
nostro
now we
altro panelista,
move on to
Ghislaine
our
Kahambu
next
Aga.
panelist, Kahambu Aga.
Merci beaucoup.
Prima, Ghislaine, vorrei introdurre
Before you speak, I would
consigliere
like
per
to
la
introduce you,
comunicazione
Counselor for
della
Communication
Conferenza
of the
Episcopale della
Bishops'
Repubblica
Conference
Democratica
of
del
the
Congo,
Democratic Republic of
co-promotrice
Congo,
di Eco for
co-promoter
Leaders,
of
École
ECHO for
Supérieure de
Leaders,
Formation
École
et
Supérieure de
Spécialiste in
Formation and
Leadership,
Specialist in
sociale e
Leadership,
comunitaria,
Social
assistente
and
presso
Community
l'Ufficio
Leadership Assistant
Economico
at the
dell'Ambasciata del
Economic
Belgio,
Office of the Embassy
gestione delle
of
informazioni
Belgium,
economiche e
Management
politiche.
of
Aspettiamo
Political
la
and
tua
Economic
saggezza.
Information. We look forward to
Ascoltiamo a
your
te, la
wisdom,
tua parola.
and we're happy to listen to
Merci
you.
beaucoup. Nous allons échanger sur le média pour l'unité en Afrique. Défis, engagement et
We will speak about the media for
perspectives.
unity in
Commençons
Africa,
avec les
challenges,
défis. Le
commitment,
continent africain
perspectives. We
traverse d'une
start
manière
from
générale des crises à
the challenges. The
répétition
African
dans son histoire.
continent
Les défis
seems
sont
to
énormes.
go through
Ils sont
repetitive
liés
crises
à
throughout
des
its history.
transformations impulsées par la
Challenges are
croissance
enormous. They are linked to the
démographique,
transformation due to
l'urbanisation, les
demographic
nouvelles
growth,
technologies, les
to
changements
urbanization, to new
climatiques, les
technologies,
crises
to climate
géopolitiques et les
change,
nouvelles rivalités
to
stratégiques.
geopolitical
L'Afrique
crises
vit donc
and
des
strategic
divisions
rivalry.
multiformes
Africa,
qui
therefore,
créent des
goes
conflits
through
internes
multiform
et
divisions,
inter-États.
creating internal
Les causes de
conflicts
ces
which are
conflits
internal and amongst states. The causes
dimension
of these
interne,
conflicts have an internal,
régionale et
regional,
mondiale.
and world
Ces
dimension.
conflits sont parfois politiques, identitaires,
These
sont liés aux
conflicts
ressources
are political
naturelles, aux troubles
and
civils,
identity
au
ones, and they are
terrorisme,
linked to
etc. Et les conséquences.
natural resources,
Les
civil
personnes
disorder,
sont
and terrorism,
déplacées et
etc.
privées
As a
d'opportunités
consequence,
d'éducation, de
people
santé,
are
d'emploi. Les
deprived of
infrastructures sont
education
endommagées
and
ou
healthcare
détruites.
and work.
Selon les estimations
Infrastructures
d'Oxfam en
are
2007,
damaged and
l'Afrique
destroyed.
perd
According to
environ
Oxfam
18
estimates
milliards de dollars
2007,
chaque année du
Africa
fait des conflits et
loses
des violences
almost
armées.
$18 billion
Face à ces constats
dollars
déchirés et depuis
due
des
a year
années,
due to
pour le
armed
cas de la
conflict.
République démocratique
Before this
du
continent,
Congo, depuis
which
environ
is
30 ans,
pulled apart
Net1 s'est donné à
by many
faire
years, the
au niveau
Net1
international et au
has
niveau
taken
local.
on
25
a
ans
role
jour
both at
pour
the local
jour
and
d'un
national
travail pour
level,
la promotion des médias,
25 years
pour la
of work
cohésion
day
sobre de
after
tout
day
développement.
for the Media
Net1 a
Commission
donc soutenu
serving
un
cohesion,
leadership
which
médiatique
is
offrant
necessary
des outils
for
narratifs
development.
et de communication
Net1
adéquats
has
pour le bien
supported
commun.
a media
Ce
leadership
travail en
offering
synergie constitue
the
une grande
narrative tools
richesse
and
dans ce
communication
monde où
tools
les
to
gains
reach the
priment
common good.
et
This
sacrifice
work in synergy
à
represents
travers
a
les
great
différents
richness
travaux,
in this
il était
world
question pour
where
les
earning
continents
prevails on
de
everything and
redécouvrir ses
sacrifices
propres
everything.
racines
Through
spirituelles et
various
culturelles
work,
en les appliquant
we
également aux
needed to
usages des médias.
rediscover our
Devant
spiritual
cet
and cultural
engagement
roots, applying them
que les lignes
also to the
ci-dessous
use of the
présentent,
media.
la question d'impact
Before
de
this
médias
commitments
sur la
that
qualité de
the
vie des
following lines
communautés
present,
reste
the
ouverte.
issue of media impact on the
Parlons
quality of life of communities
de
remains
l'engagement.
open.
En Afrique,
Let's
Net
talk
One a
about
déjà
our commitment.
organisé 4
In
congrès
Africa, Net
en
One
Côte
has already
d'Ivoire, au
organized
Kenya, au
4
Burkina
congresses,
Faso
Ivory
et en
Coast,
République
Kenya,
démocratique
Burkina
du Congo.
Faso, and the Democratic
En RDC
Republic of Congo.
particulièrement, en février 2020,
In
l'École
DRC,
supérieure de formation des
from the
leaders de
4th to the 8th
l'unité
of February
EcoFor Leaders,
2020, the
Focolari, en collaboration avec Net One, avait
school
organisé à
for the High
Kinshasa
School for
un
Leader
congrès
Training of
international sur la
Unity, along with
communication
Net One,
inclusive,
organized in Kinshasa an
médias
international
et
congress on
citoyenneté
communication entitled
responsable en Afrique,
Media and
pour la
Responsible
promotion du
Citizenship
dialogue et
in
du
Africa,
développement des
for the
communautés.
promotion of
Ce congrès
dialogue
avait
and the development
sensibilisé
of
les acteurs des
communities.
médias en
This
particulier et de la
Congress
communication en
had
général aux
raised
défis d'une
awareness
communication
in
axée
the
sur la
media
citoyenneté
actors in
responsable,
particular and
le
communication in general
développement et la
to the
solidarité
challenges
des
of a communication
populations eu
oriented
égard au
to
contexte
responsible
sociopolitique,
citizenship,
économique
to the
et
development and the
sécuritaire qui
solidarity of
prévaut en
populations
Afrique.
in the socio-political
Plusieurs
context,
autorités du monde
economical
religieux,
context,
politique et
and
société
that of
civile avaient
security which is
participé à
prevailing in
l'ouverture de
Africa.
cette
Various
rencontre.
authority in the religious,
À ces
political
personnalités
world
s'ajoutaient
and
les
civil
délégués
society
d'Italie, de
had
la Belgique, du Togo, du
participated
Cameroun,
in
du
the
Burundi,
opening of
etc.
this important
La tenue
meeting,
de ces assises
and there were
panafricaines
also
et
other
mondiales
delegates
dans la
coming
capitale
from the
congolaise
movement.
était une
So
opportunité qui
we
avait permis de
saw a
sensibiliser les
range
professionnels
of
de la
people present
communication au
from Belgium,
dialogue,
Togo,
à la
Cameroon,
promotion
Burundi.
de la cohésion entre les
This
peuples à travers le média.
meeting
Les acteurs
was
de
the
communication
opportunity
avaient
allowing
adopté
us
de
to
nouvelles stratégies
highlight
médiatiques
the need
pour
of
promouvoir
awareness in
l'unité et
professionals
le
of
dialogue entre
communication
les
in
peuples.
dialogue through
Enfin,
the media. The
l'association Net One s'est
stakeholders had
installée
adopted
officiellement
new
en
media
RDC.
strategies in order to promote
Le
unity and
11
dialogue amongst
décembre
people, and
2021, la deuxième
the
édition de la
Net
conférence
One was officially launched
internationale
in
avait lieu
DRC.
à
The second
Kinshasa
edition,
sous le thème Rôle du
2021, took
journaliste
place in
et du leader
Kinshasa. The
d'opinion
theme was
dans
the
le
role
traitement de
of journalists
l'information
and
destinée au
leaders and
public
opinion leaders in
avant,
treating
pendant et après le
information
processus
for
électoral.
the general
Cette
public
conférence
before,
était
during,
organisée
and
avec
after
la
an electoral
collaboration
process. This
des
conference was
réseaux des
organized with the
journalistes
cooperation
de
of
la
the networks
conférence
of journalists
épiscopale
of the
congolaise,
Bishops'
de
Conference
l'Église
of
du Christ au
Congo,
Congo et des jeunes
the
leaders.
Church of
Avec
Christ in
l'avènement des
Congo,
médias
and some young
sociaux, l'éthique
leaders.
journalistique n'est plus
With the
respectée.
arrival of
Les
social
mensonges,
media,
la
journalistic
désinformation, les
ethics is
dogs,
no
les
longer
fake news,
respected.
injures, qui
Fake
départagent à
news,
l'endroit de ceux qui ne
misinformation,
partagent pas la même
intoxication,
vision que le pouvoir sont
rumors,
diffusés
lies,
à
offences,
longueur de journée,
intimidations towards
spécialement
those
pendant la
who
période
don't share the same
électorale.
vision of power are
Les
very
journalistes,
widespread,
malgré
especially
leur
in
bonne
the run-up
volonté,
to an
se
electoral
retrouvent
moment.
impuissants devant les
Journalists, despite
médias
their goodwill, find
qui doivent
themselves
passer
impotent before
l'idéologie
the
de ceux
media,
qui les ont
who
créés.
need
Il faut
to
noter que cette
transmit the
situation a fait que
ideology
les
of those who
journalistes
created them.
d'investigation
We
sont
need to note
devenus
that
presque
this
rares
has
en RDC. D'une
made
manière générale, les
investigative journalists
journalistes
rare in
répètent des
DRC.
faits sans les
Generally, they
analyser.
just repeat
Pour
facts without
terminer,
analyzing
passons aux
them.
perspectives.
To end,
Les travaux
I
de
would like to
Net One
talk about the
jusque-là, de
outlook. The work
promouvoir les
of Net
médias pour
One
l'unité
so
et de
far
former
was
les
that of
acteurs médiatiques
promoting
à
the
une
media for
culture du
unity and
dialogue
to
dans le traitement de
form
l'information
media
doit
stakeholders to a
continuer.
culture of dialogue
Cependant,
and
en
in
y
treating
ajoutant une
information.
autre
This
dose,
needs to
les
continue
lignes
with one
éditoriales
further
sont déjà
datum.
fixées et malgré la
The
bonne volonté du
editorial
journaliste,
guidelines have
il ne
already
peut
been
pas aller
fixed, and
à
despite
l'encontre
their
de la
work,
ligne
their
éditoriale.
goodwill,
Il passe
journalists
l'information,
cannot
mais la
not
philosophie
follow
du
this
média
line.
marque ce point,
They transfer information,
influence
but the
la
media
communauté
philosophy
positivement ou
is
négativement.
heavier
Les
and
médias
influences
professionnels
the
qui sont
community positively
majoritaires
or
s'occupent d'une
negatively.
manière
Professional
générale
media
à
general
évangéliser ses
deal with
adeptes.
evangelizing
Certains ne
their followers.
s'intéressent pas à la vie
Some
politique.
have no interest in
Actuellement, en
political
RDC, c'est
life.
seulement l'Église
Currently
catholique
in
et aussi
DRC,
protestante qui donne de
only
la
the
voix pour
Catholic
défendre
Church
les
gives
droits du
voice to the
peuple.
defense of the rights of the
L'Église
people.
catholique, avec ses 49 diocèses, la conférence
With its
épiscopale
her
organise la
49
diffusion
dioceses, the
de son
Catholic Church
information qui
organizes the
passe après sur les
diffusion of
50
information
radios
through
et
its
9 télévisions. En pratique, pratique la
media
commission traite
outlet.
l'information et la publie
the
sur la plateforme
Commission
des radios-télévisions diocésaines.
develops the information and
Et puis
places
celle-ci le
places the
répercute sur le
information
média
on the
qui sont
platform
dans
of
ces
diocesan
50
radio
diocèses.
television. They collect the
L'Église
information and they
protestante,
circulate it.
les églises
The
pentecôtistes, l'évangéliste,
Protestant
le musulman
churches,
ont aussi chacun
Pentecostal
respectivement ces
and
médias à travers le
Muslims
pays.
and
Le média
other
de
groups
l'État,
have
quant à
their
eux,
own
cherche à
media
promouvoir leur pouvoir et
outlets.
ceux de
State media try
l'opposition
to
dénoncent.
make
Le
their
média
power
privé,
felt,
commerciaux sont très
and
peu.
the
Et à
opposition
cela s'ajoutent
instead
les médias
are
internationaux qui passent
work
également la
against
politique de leur pays sur
commercial
la
media. Then there
RCC.
are international
Devant ces
media
tableaux qui est déjà destiné, quels que
copying
soient les
and
efforts des hommes de
highlighting
médias
their own
qui
policies on
travaillent,
DRC
n'arrivent
coming
pas à
from their own
impacter
countries.
en
In
faisant
this,
des médias un
despite
instrument de
the
la politique.
effort of those
Les
working in the
médias
media,
tels
we
que
cannot have an
présentés
impact
fragmentent
which will
le
allow
personne.
media to become a
Quoi
cohesion
faire
tool. Therefore,
pour
the media,
contourner
as they
cette
are presented,
difficulté? Il
are
convient à ce que tous les
simply
acteurs qui
a
cherchent à
tool
promouvoir
in
le
everybody's
média
hands.
pour
What can we
l'unité
do
soient
in order to
attentifs à
overcome
des
these
événements
difficulties? We
qui
need
vont dans
all
le sens de la
stakeholders
promotion du dialogue,
to
du
be
bien-être
aware of
collectif.
those events
L'autre
which
option
may
serait
promote
carrément de
dialogue and
créer
the common
d'événements
good. The other
positifs
option would be that of
qui
creating
fédèrent
positive events
tous
and
et
to
les médiatiser
advertise
à
them
fond. C'est comme
very
l'expérience de
carefully.
Run for Unity qu'on avait fait une fois en appelant les
As Run
personnes
for
de différentes
Unity, which we
églises
saw,
de tous bords.
which
Après,
unites
l'événement est
people from
diffusé dans
different
toute
churches
la
and
presse.
different walks of life.
Chiara Lubic avait
We see a
compris
range of
cela
events which
et à
are
son vivant,
circulated all
elle
over
a
the world.
pu
Chiara Lubich
mobiliser
understood
des
this during
milliers de
her
personnes
life.
dans
She
des réunions
mobilized
qui
thousands
ont
of
prouvé
persons
à
in
l'humanité que
meetings
la
that
cohésion entre
proved
les humains
to
est possible.
humanity that
Nous citons, il y
cohesion
a les
amongst
Gen Fest, le
humans
Family
is
Fest et les
possible.
super congrès.
We quote
Et le réunissait
Gemfest,
des
Family
milliers de
Fest,
personnes venues
and all the various
de tous
congresses,
bords.
which united thousands of people coming from
Et
all
ce
social
que nous
classes.
pouvons ajouter, à part
We
les
can
événements
add
qu'on peut créer et les
that
médiatiser
apart
à fond,
from these
il faut aussi
events
se
which we
servir
can
des
create,
grands hommes, de
we
modèles. Au Congo, il y
need
a Emery
to
Lumumba, il y a Monseigneur Muzirwa, il y a
use
un Congolais qui
these
avait vécu
models,
en
and we
1960 et il a laissé
need
un
to
livre intéressant
use
qu'on
also
peut
eminent
continuer.
personalities
Le
such as
livre
Mr.
est
Lubumba,
intitulé La
Monsignor
remise en question,
Mizirwa,
base de la
and the
décolonisation
researcher
mentale.
and
Dans son
writer
livre, il
Kalanda.
parle de la force et
The
de l'unité
her
d'un
book is called
peuple,
La Remise en
soulignant le
Question, the
concept
basis
de
for
l'unité
mental
psychique.
decolonization. She talks about
Dans
the
nos pays où
strength of
règnent
unity in
les
her people,
dictatures, la corruption,
underlying
l'égoïsme et les
the
divisions
concept
à
of
tous les
psychic
niveaux, il est
unity. These are
impérieux
places where we have
d'encourager
dictatorships,
l'Église
corruption,
à
egoism,
continuer à
divisions at
conduire
all
le
levels, and
peuple
it's
de Dieu
imperative to
à
encourage the
travers les
church to
médias
continue
pour se
to
libérer.
shepherd the
Il
people
faut
of God through
également
the media in
encourager
order
les
to free
créateurs
themselves. We
d'événements
also need to
qui ont
encourage the
devenus des
organizers of events,
influenceurs.
creators of content,
Merci.
influencers to promote this paradigm for unity.
Grazie mille Ghislaine. E si sente la tua passione
Thank you very
proprio e
much. We
grazie
can
per
hear your
diffondere
passion,
i
and thank you
principi del Net
for
One
circulating the
in
principles
quella
of
regione.
Net
Grazie
One
mille.
in that region. Thank you very
Adesso
much.
proseguiamo con Gian Bedel Dandula. Ok, lui è un comunicologo per Oblast de Marie, dottorando all'Università del Scienze
So he's an
dell'Informazione e
oblat
della
of the
Comunicazione
Virgin Mary.
UNISIC,
He has a
coordinator general del
degree in
Réseau des journalistes fact-checkers
communication
des agences de presse africaines. Grazie
and
a un
general
lavoro
coordinator of the
direttore del
network of
servizio
journalists,
fact-checking
fact-checkers of the
all'Agence Congolaise de
African Press
Presse.
Agency
Allora, la tua saggezza, Gian.
and ACP. So I give you the
Merci beaucoup. Bonsoir à tout le
floor.
monde. Je voudrais partager avec vous autour de la communication et
So,
valeurs en
good
République
evening.
démocratique du Congo.
I want to
Nous
talk
voulons
about the
situer
various
notre
communication in
contribution
the Democratic
en ayant
Republic
pour
of
paradigme de
Congo. We want to
communication des
situate
valeurs
our contribution by having as a
d'exemple
paradigm of
Chiara,
communication the values of the
qui
social
durant ses jours ici
activist
sur Terre
Chiara
en fait que
Lubich,
communiquer
who
des
during
valeurs
her days here on
évangéliques
earth
de
has
fraternité,
communicated
d'amour et d'unité.
gospel values of brotherhood, love,
Notre
and
champ
unity.
empirique est la
Our
République
empirical
démocratique du
field
Congo,
is the Democratic
un
Republic
pays
of
très
Congo,
complexe et
a
diversifié
complex
en quête
and diverse
d'unité et de
country
cohésion.
in search of unity and
En
cohesion.
République démocratique du Congo, mon pays,
In the Democratic Republic of
avec la
Congo, my
vulgarisation
country,
des
with
smartphones
the
et l'avènement des réseaux
popularization
sociaux
of
non
smartphones
réglementés,
and the advent of
tout le monde veut
unregulated social
communiquer et dire
networks,
ce qu'il pense
everyone
quand
wants
il
to
le veut,
communicate
comme
and
il le
say
veut.
what they think, when they want,
Les gardiens de la
and
communication
how they want.
autrefois deviennent aujourd'hui des
The
acteurs
guardians of
secondaires.
communication
Finalement,
of other
tout
times
sévit
become
quand c'est à la
secondary
célérité
players
sans
today.
filtrer les contenus.
And
Si la
everything is said and
communication
known
implique une
quickly
altérité,
without filtering the
elle est ouverte à
content.
l'autre.
If
Elle
communication
apporte quelque
implies
chose de nouveau,
otherness,
en
it
l'occurrence
is
l'information. Elle
openness to
construit,
others. It brings something
élimine,
new, in this
éclaire,
case,
dissipe les
information.
malentendus
It
et
builds,
ajoute
it
et se poser des
unites,
questions sur
enlightens,
la situation
dispels
actuelle de la
misunderstandings,
République
and
démocratique
there
du
is a
Congo,
reason
qui
to ask
souvent est devenue
questions
presque
about the
communicante.
current situation
La
in the
République démocratique du
Democratic
Congo, avec
Republic
sa superficie aux
of
dimensions
Congo.
continentales, ses diversités linguistiques,
And
religieuses, culturelles, devient
the
en
Democratic Republic
réalité
of
une
Congo, with
nébuleuse,
its
une jungle sans une
continental-sized
communication
area,
des
its
valeurs.
linguistic, religious, cultural
Que
diversity,
peut
becomes a
apporter une bonne
nebula and a
communication
jungle
au
without
sein d'une
communication of
communauté,
values. What
qu'elle
can
soit
good
congolaise ou
communication
autre,
bring to a community
sans verser dans une dimension purement morale? Une bonne
without
communication
falling into a
engendre
purely
l'amour,
moral
la communion fraternelle,
dimension? Good communication
la franchise,
engenders love, fraternal
l'unité,
communion,
la cohésion,
frankness,
etc.
sincerity, unity,
Si le but de la
cohesion,
communication
etc.
est de créer des interactions positives
If the
entre les
purpose of
humains,
communication is to
alors
create positive
l'insulte,
interactions between
le
humans,
dénigrement,
then
la
insult,
désinformation et la
denigration,
mésinformation, les discours de haine,
disinformation,
les
and
antivaleurs ne figurent
misinformation,
pas dans
hate
ses
speech,
objectifs.
and anti-values are
Malheureusement,
not
alors,
among its
en République démocratique du
objectives.
Congo, l'acte communicationnel a été banalisé. L'appartenance des communicants aux nombreux partis
Unfortunately,
politiques,
in our
la
country, the act of
divergence
communication has
d'intérêts
been
ont engendré
trivialized.
un monde
The
sans ordre,
belonging of
une
communicators
culture du
to the many
mensonge
political
à la place de
parties,
la
the
vérité,
divergence of
une culture
interests
égoïste,
have engendered
sympathique,
the world
une
without
culture de la
love, a
mort à la
culture of
place de la vie.
lies instead of truth,
Ces
a
mots
selfish culture
absurdes
of
ont
easy
provoqué dans
gain, a
plusieurs
culture of
cas des
death
effets
instead of life.
inattendus.
Words and
Une
attitudes have
communication
caused
mal amorcée
unexpected
se transforme
effects
en
in
haine,
several cases.
la cohésion se
Poorly
transforme en
initiated
division,
communication
la
turns
vie
into
à la
hatred,
mort, et c'est
cohesion
ce qui
turns into
arrive en
division,
République démocratique du
life into
Congo avec
death,
les guerres
and
que
this
nous
is
avons
what
vues,
happens
et
in
surtout
the
avec la
Democratic
communication
Republic of
vide des
Congo,
valeurs et des
especially
réseaux
with
sociaux numériques.
with a communication that is empty
La
of values
situation
on
concrète
digital
et
social networks.
particulière de la RDC
The
mérite une
concrete
communication
situation of
appropriée
the
qui tient
Democratic
compte des
Republic of
valeurs
Congo
éthiques
deserves
dans chaque
appropriate
axe de la vie
communication that
congolaise.
takes into account ethical
La crise
values
congolaise
in each
n'est pas
axis
d'abord
of
une
our
crise
life. The
politique, c'est
Congolese
une crise des
crisis is
valeurs.
not primarily a political
La
crisis, but
RDC
a
fertile
crisis of
spirituellement,
values.
pour
The
parler
DRC is
sans
a
spirituel,
spiritually
il
fertile
n'est pas
country.
rare de trouver
It is
une
not
église sur une rue,
uncommon
surtout à Kinshasa,
to find
sans
more than
compter les
one church
paroisses
on the
catholiques,
street,
les églises
especially in
protestantes,
Kinshasa, not to mention
kimbanguistes,
the
les
Roman Catholic
mosquées. Tous
parishes,
ces
Protestant
Eldorado
churches,
spirituels distillent au quotidien des
Kimbangiste
messages à
mosques,
leurs
etc.
adeptes,
All these
ce qui
spiritual
suppose une interaction, une
this
fluidité
supposes an
entre l'émetteur et le
interaction
récepteur.
among
Comment
all these
alors
different
comprendre
religious
certains
messages, a
comportements
fluidity
dans un
between the
pays qui semble
transmitter and the
recopier?
receiver. How
Les
then to
problèmes se
understand
posent
certain
sur le contenu de
behaviors
la
in a country that
communication.
seems to
Quel
pray a
message
lot?
doivent
The
ou
problem
reçoivent
arises on
ces
the
nombreux
content of the
Congolais?
communication. What
Si
messages
le
do
message
these many
reçu était le
Congolese
même que celui de
prayerful
Chiara,
people receive?
le
If the
Congo
message
serait un
received
paradis
was the
terrestre.
same as that
Chiara ne
of Chiara
disait-elle pas
Lubik,
que
the
l'amour
Congo
réciproque
would
est
be
notre
an
habit?
earthly paradise.
Pour
Didn't Chiara
elle,
say
dans
that
cet
reciprocal
amour,
love is
ce
our
qui
habit?
compte, c'est
For
d'aimer.
her,
Sur
in
le plan des
love, what
relations
matters is to
interpersonnelles,
love.
une
So,
bonne
in
communication
terms
ne
of
laisse pas de place à la
interpersonal
compromission et à
relations, the good
l'ambiguïté.
communication generates
La
no room
RDC,
for
c'est une
compromise
mosaïque
and
culturelle.
ambiguity.
Autant
The
de
Democratic
langues,
Republic of Congo
autant
is
de
a cultural
cultures. La bonne
mosaic. Good
communication
communication between
entre
Congolese
Congolais
would not
n'engendrerait
generate
pas
hate
des discours de
speech
haine et le
and
manque de cohésion
lack of
nationale.
national
La
cohesion.
haine tribale devient source
Tribal
de
hatred
frustration.
becomes a
Les
source of
guerres atroces
frustration.
n'engendrent que
Atrocious
la
wars
rancœur
only
et la culture
generate
de la mort.
resentment and the culture
Le
of death,
constat actuel est que plusieurs
and they
médias en
feed the
ligne en
culture of
République
death. The
démocratique du
current
Congo sont
observation
amateurs.
is that several
Ils
online
distillent des
media
fake
in
news dans le
Congo
but
are
de nuire à la
amateur.
place de
They distill
communiquer
fake
pour les
news,
valeurs.
to harm
Les
instead of
phénomènes
communicating
atypiques
for
découpage
values. the typical phenomenon of coupage, which is an organized begging that characterized the Congolese journalist, seems like vermin to the communication of values in Congo. The non-neutrality of journalists who are in the pay of politicians is a major obstacle to objectivity as an attribute of communication that convey values. And my conclusion is this: is it possible to communicate and transmit values? Yes, but such communication does not go without a paradigm. It is necessary to have references, and our reference was Chiara Lubich, who communicated all her life in favor of human and spiritual values. Communication ethics is a requirement for any communicator at the risk of becoming a tyrant. In the case of the Democratic Republic of Congo, poor communication becomes the cause of multifaceted vices. An ambiguity has set in the content of the speech of those who are supposed to enlighten individuals in a society in crisis of values. We will never say it enough. The Congolese crisis is a communication crisis that should generate an ethic that illuminates and enlightens consciences. Each sector of the life of the Congolese is concerned by a change in communication paradigm. The invitation to move from linearity to systemic circularity is imperative. Thank you very much.
Grazie mille, Padre Gianni.
Thank you,
È molto chiaro.
Father
Sì,
Jean
preghiamo proprio per
Bedel.
questo
That is
profondo
very clear, and we'll
desiderio
pray
proprio
for
di una
this desire
comunicazione
all over the world, for
che
this
unisce. Grazie
communication
mille.
that can
Adesso proseguiamo
unite people. And
a
now
Emile
we
Tevin,
go to Emile
un Masters in
Teven,
Media UP Information e
who is a
Comunicazione
Master
Università
Media
Jean
of
Moulin
Information
Lyon,
Communication in the University de Jean
responsabile della
Moulin
comunicazione
of Lyon,
Diocesi di
and he is the person,
Saint-Denis de la
the
Réunion,
official of communication in the
giornalista,
Diocese of Saint-Denis de la
direttore
Réunion,
responsabile
journalist,
casa editrice
former
Nouvelle
director
Cité
of Nouvelle
dal
Cité
2018
from
fino al
2018
2022.
to
Ha
2022.
lavorato per
He
diversi media,
worked
tra
for
quelli
several
Lux
media,
Magazine,
and among them
RCF
Lourdes
Lyon,
Magazine,
Fourvière et
RCF
Le
Lyon
Progrès de Lyon
Fourvière,
et
and Le
Agir et
Progrès de Lyon,
Entreprendre.
as well as Agir
La
et
parola, Emile.
Entreprendre. So I give the floor to you,
Bonjour à tous.
Emile
Je
Tevan.
vais partager mon écran, si c'est possible.
So I will
Merci
share my
de m'avoir
screen
convié à
if
participer
possible.
à ce
Thank you for
séminaire.
inviting me to take part in this seminar.
Voilà, est-ce qu'on voit l'écran?
I am afraid you
Donc
don't
moi, je
see
souhaite
the
parler
screen.
de deux piliers que
So
pour
I
moi sont
want
très
to
importants dans
talk
le
about
métier de
two
communicant et
pillars
de
that are very
journaliste.
important for
Rencontrer
our
des
work of
personnes et
journalists,
raconter des histoires.
meeting people
Quel est le
and
point
telling
commun entre
stories.
un roman de
What do a
Han Kang,
novel by Han
la
Kang,
série The
the
Chosen,
series The Chosen,
un reportage de
a
Caroline
report by
Hayek,
Caroline
qui est
Hayek,
journaliste à L'Orient le Jour,
who is a journalist of
l'histoire
L'Orient Le
d'Abraham
Jour, Lebanon, the
et
story
les
of
récits
Abraham
légendaires
and
du
the
grand-père
legendary
que
stories
les
of
enfants
the
écoutent avec
grandfather the
avidité.
children listen to
C'est une
avidly,
histoire bien
have
racontée
in
qui touche le
common.
cœur.
A well-told story that
Depuis la nuit
touches
des
the
temps,
heart.
les hommes
Since
ont
the
besoin
dawn of
d'entendre
time,
et
people
raconter.
have needed to hear and tell
Vediamo
stories.
solo un foto. Sì.
I'm sorry, we only see a picture here.
Ah,
So, I don't know.
ah d'accord. Bon, c'est bon. Ok. Bon, ben tant pis, on va faire sans le. Ce sont des photos, je suis pas sûre que ça marche. Ok. On va faire sans le.
But these,
sans le
okay, the
partage.
pictures don't work. We will do without them.
Donc, c'est une histoire bien racontée
So,
qui touche le cœur.
I say that a
Depuis
well-told
la nuit des
story
temps,
touches the heart. Since the
hommes ont
dawn of
besoin
time,
d'entendre et de
people
raconter
have
des
needed
histoires
to hear and
partout
tell
sur la terre.
stories. everywhere on
construire,
earth. And
d'écrire
the
et de
art of
raconter une bonne
constructing,
histoire
writing,
s'apprend,
and telling
se
a good
transmet et
story
s'exerce.
is learned, transmitted, and
Les
practiced.
défauts les plus courants
The
des
most
productions
common
actuelles
flaws in
tiennent en
current
deux tendances.
productions are
De
twofold.
magnifiques objets culturels, mais au
Magnificent
contenu
cultural
creux,
objects,
ou qui
but
laissent
with
l'âme
hollow
affamée,
content, or which
ou
leave
bien des
the
faits
soul
remarquables,
hungry.
des
Or
témoignages
remarkable facts,
incroyables de gens
incredible
simples qui ne
testimonies
sont
of
pas
simple
communiqués,
people
mis en valeur ou bien
that are
racontés.
not communicated or
Il en va de même
highlighted
pour nos
or
expériences
well
de
told.
dialogue
And the
et
same
nos
goes for our
épopées
experiences of
fraternelles et
dialogue and our
spirituelles.
fraternal and spiritual
Comment
epics.
nous y
How do we
prévenir
go
pour les
about
rendre
making them
populaires,
popular, attractive,
attractives,
more
plus
attractive than
attirantes que
stories
les récits où
dominated by
dominent les
ideologies,
idéologies, la division,
division,
la peur de
fear of the
l'étranger,
foreigner,
de celui
of
qui ne
those who do
partage
not
pas ma
share my
culture,
culture,
ma
my
religion
religion,
ou
or
ma
my
vision du
vision of the
monde.
world?
C'est tout l'enjeu de nos métiers.
This is the whole challenge of our
Donc, par ailleurs, j'ai
professions.
choisi d'évoquer deux
Furthermore,
expériences
I have
qui mettent
chosen
en
to
avant
evoke
la
two
force du
experiences that
collectif
highlight the
et le
strength of the
dialogue de la vie
collective and the
comme voie
dialogue of
royale
life
pour vivre
as the
l'amitié
royal
spirituelle entre
road to
musulmans
living
et chrétiens.
spiritual friendship between Muslims
La première,
and
c'est un séminaire de
Christians.
formation qui a eu lieu en Côte
The
d'Ivoire,
first is
à Mans,
a training
en juin
seminar
2016,
in Man
avec Michele
in the
Zambiki. Nous
Ivory
avons animé un
Coast, the
séminaire de
power of the
journalisme
collective.
auprès de
In June
39 participants
2016,
venant de Côte d'Ivoire, Bénin,
with Michele
du
Zanzucchi
Togo,
led this
de
seminar with
l'Angola et du
39
Kenya.
participants from Ivory Coast,
Il s'est
Benin,
déroulé
Togo,
à
Angola,
Mans
and
au
Kenya.
centre de rencontre et de
It
formation
took place
sécularier.
in Man at the
En 5 jours
Focolari
seulement,
meeting
le groupe
and
divisé en deux
meeting
rédactions
center,
pour la partie
Mariapolis,
travaux
Victoria.
pratiques
In 5 days,
a
the
créé
group
2
divided
magazines,
into 2 editorial
réalisé des
offices for
reportages
the
et des
practical work
interviews,
part.
rédigé les
They
articles.
created 2 magazines,
Les 2
they
revues
produced
sont
reports
maquettées
and
et imprimées en un
interviews.
temps record.
They wrote
À la
articles.
fin du
2
séminaire,
magazines
tous
were
les
laid down and
participants tiennent
printed
dans leurs
in
mains
record
les fruits
time. At
d'un
the end
travail
of the
collectif
seminar, all the
efficace.
participants held in their
Mon
hands
groupe a
the
choisi
fruits of
d'appeler
an
son journal
effective
Quado,
collective work.
ce
My
qui
group
signifie dans la
chose
langue
to call
locale
its
d'âne,
newspaper
être
Quado,
ensemble, unité,
which
cohésion.
means in that languages it means
Cela
being
n'aurait pas pu se
together,
faire sans le
unity and
concours de tous, les
cohesion.
organisateurs, les
These
chauffeurs
could not
habitués
have been
aux routes
possible
cabotées,
without
les
the help of
bénévoles qui
everyone,
préparaient les repas,
organizers,
le réseau
drivers
local pour
accustomed
réaliser
to
les
bumpy
reportages
roads,
et la présence
volunteers
d'un
to prepare
graphiste
meals, a local
et d'une
network to
imprimerie
produce reports,
sur le site de
presence
la
of a
Mariapolis
graphic
Victoria
designer, and the
et la
printing
communauté des
press at the
Focolari.
Mariapolis Victoria
Tout un
and the
écosystème
Focolari
humain riche
community, a
d'opportunités.
whole human
À la
ecosystem
fin du
rich
séminaire, les
in
participants nous ont
opportunities.
exprimé un
At the end
émouvant
of the
gratitude
seminar,
et nous ont
the
interpellés
participants
sur la
expressed
nécessité de
their
former
touching
leurs
gratitude and
responsables
challenged
à
us on the
l'éthique.
need to train
Les
their
conditions dans lesquelles
managers
les
in
journalistes de
ethics,
ces pays évoluent
since
ne
the
permettent pas
conditions in
toujours de
which
bien faire leur
journalists in
travail.
these countries operate
Enfin, je
do not
réalisais
always
aussi
allow
notre
them
chance en France
to
et
do
dans
their
beaucoup de pays
job
d'Europe
well
d'avoir un
because of
accès pratiquement
precariousness,
gratuit au
corruption, management
savoir,
problems,
aux
etc.
livres, à travers
I
de
realized
nombreuses
how lucky we are
librairies
in
et bibliothèques
France
sur le
to
territoire.
have practically free access to
La deuxième
knowledge and books
expérience,
through the tight
c'est la
network
rencontre de
of
la communauté des
libraries
Focolari en
and
Algérie
bookshops
en juin
everywhere. The
2018.
Focolare community in
J'ai la chance
Algeria,
de partir en
an
Algérie
Islamic Christian
à la
dialogue
rencontre de
that
cette
starts from
communauté
life.
qui est
In
composée
June
majoritairement
2018, I
de
had the
croyants
chance to
musulmans
go to Algeria
et
to
d'une
meet the
poignée de
Focolare
chrétiens
community,
européens.
mainly composed of
Nous
Muslim
voulons
believers
comprendre
and a
comment la
handful of
spiritualité de
European
Chiara Lubich
Christians.
touche les
We
musulmans de
want
ce
to
pays
understand how the spirituality
et quelle couleur prend le dialogue
of Chiara Lubich
interreligieux sur
affects
cette
the
terre
Muslims of
éprouvée.
this country and what colors the
Le début
interreligious
de cette
dialogue
histoire
takes
commence
on
en
in this tested, in this
1976, quand
hardly
trois
tested
Focolari
land.
arrivent à
The beginning of the
Tlemcen
story began
pour
in
préparer un
1966
monastère
when 3 men
bénédictin.
Focolarinos arrived in
Et ce début
Tlemcen to
témoigne
repair
d'une
a
vie simple,
Benedictine monastery.
concrète, faite de services
They
rendus,
bear
d'amitié et
witness
de
to a simple,
solidarité.
concrete life made up of services,
Toutefois, au
render,
fil des
friendship,
ans,
and
les
solidarity.
musulmans font part d'une crainte partagée,
However, Muslims
celle de devoir se convertir au
share the
christianisme
fear
pour
that of
vivre la
having to
spiritualité de
convert
Chiara.
to Christianity
Or, il n'en est pas
to
question.
be able to live the spirituality of Chiara
Le
Lubich.
prosélytisme n'a pas sa place.
However, this is
Chrétiens et
out
musulmans
of
se
the
retrouvent
question.
sur des valeurs communes,
Proselytism had no
partagent
place
le même
in their
souci de la
proposal.
paix,
Christians and
de la
Muslims
santé,
find
de la
themselves on
justice, de la
common values.
fraternité.
They share the
Ils
same
cherchent aussi à
concern
mieux
for
se
the earth earth. as well
et
as
qui
health,
reconnaissent,
justice,
chercheraient Dieu
and
tout en
fraternity.
respectant la tradition religieuse de
They
chacun.
also seek to know
Nous
each other
rencontrons aussi
better
des
and they
représentants de
recognize
l'Église
themselves
catholique,
as seekers of God
ouvriers
while
infatigables dans la ligne
respecting
du
each
Seigneur.
other's religious
Une Église
tradition.
qui a beaucoup à nous apprendre,
We also
car elle
meet
est prophétique,
representatives of the
c'est
Catholic
celle des
Church,
périphéries,
tireless
de la
workers
rencontre
in the Lord's
citoyenne,
vineyard,
qui avance
a
sans
church
faire de
that
bruit,
has much
mais
to
dans une
teach us
grande
because it
justesse et
is a
lumière.
prophetic church,
En
the
conclusion,
church of
j'ai
the
témoigné les
peripheries
dernières
of
strophes du poème
encounter
soufi d'Ibn
that
Arabi,
advance without
L'amour est
making
ma
noise, but
religion
with
et ma
great
foi,
justice and light. And we
qui reflète bien
conclude
l'esprit
with a
dans lequel
poem
les croyants musulmans et
about
chrétiens que nous
religion
avons
and
rencontrés
faith
en Algérie cherchent à vivre la fraternité.
that reflects the spirit in which
Mon
Muslim and
cœur
Christian
est devenu
believers that we
capable
met in Algeria seek to
d'accueillir
live in
toutes les formes.
fraternity.
Il est pâturage pour
My
gazelles
heart has become capable
et
of
abbé pour
welcoming
moines.
all forms. It is a
Il
pasture
est un
for
temple pour
gazelles and an
idoles
abbey for monks.
et la
It is a
Kaaba
temple
pour
for
qui en fait
idols
le
and the
tour.
Kaaba for those who
Il
go
est les
around it.
tables de la
It
Torah
is the
et
tablets of
aussi
the
les feuillets du
Torah
Coran.
and also the
La
pages of the
religion que je
Quran.
professe
The
est celle
religion
de
that I
l'amour.
profess is that of
Partout où
love.
ces mondes
Wherever
tournent,
his
l'amour est ma
months
religion et
turn,
ma foi.
love is my religion and my faith.
J'aurais aimé pouvoir
I
évoquer
would
d'autres
have
réalités,
liked to
notamment
be
celle de
able to
l'île de la
evoke
Réunion,
other
qui est
realities, in
située au carrefour
particular
de
that
l'Afrique et
of
de
the
l'Asie, où
Isle
de
of
nombreuses
Reunion,
religions et
located at the
cultures
crossroads of
vivent en
Africa and
relative
Asia,
bonne harmonie,
where many cultures
mais
and
nous n'avons pas le
religions
temps.
live in relative
Voilà, je vous
harmony,
remercie de
but
votre
we
attention.
have no time. So I thank you for your attention.
Molto bello, molto bello.
So,
Si
really
vede proprio
beautiful.
il
Thank you very
giornalismo
much. You can
ideologico in
see
azione.
the
Adesso
theological
proseguiamo con
journalism in
Marco Gui,
action, and we go
direttore
ahead
del
with
Centro
Marco
Benessere
Gui,
Digitale
director of
e
the
professore
Digital Center
associato
Welfare
nel
and associate
Dipartimento di
professor in
Sociologia
the Department
e
of
Ricerca Sociale
Sociology and
dell'Università di
Social Research
Milano
of the
Bicocca
University
e
of
si occupa di
Milan.
sociologia
Bicocca, he
del
works
media,
on
è
sociology
autore
of the
di
media. He is
numerose
author of
pubblicazioni
many
sull'uso dei media
publications on the
digitali,
use of
sulle
digital
disuguaglianze
media,
sociali
on
connessi,
social
sulle
inequalities
competenze
connected
digitali
with
e sugli
digital
effetti delle
competences and the
tecnologie.
effects
A
of
te la parola,
ecology. I
professore.
give you the floor, Professor Gui.
Grazie di questo gradito invito. Io vi parlerò di protezione dei minori su internet e di due iniziative che sono in corso in Italia e che sono,
I will speak
diciamo,
to you about the safeguard
convergenti
of minors
rispetto ad
online
altre
and two
iniziative a
initiatives
livello
happening in
globale.
Italy, which are convergent
Allora,
with other
una
global
premessa
initiatives.
è che
Just as a premise, I will
all'inizio
say
dell'evoluzione
that at
di
the beginning of
si era
the
pensato
internet, we
che
thought
la
that
rete
the
avrebbe
network would have
automaticamente portato una
automatically
serie di
brought
benefici.
a series of benefits.
Forse abbiamo un po' peccato di
Perhaps
tecno-ottimismo. Ci
we
aspettavamo
sinned
che
in terms of
internet avrebbe
techno-optimism. We thought
migliorato la
that the internet would have
democrazia,
improved
ci
democracy.
aspettavamo che internet avrebbe
We
migliorato
thought
l'educazione,
that
ci avrebbe resi
education would have
capaci
improved, that it
di
would have made us able
relazionarci
to
meglio gli uni con
relate
gli altri e
better
anche
with one another,
contribuire
and
al dialogo,
also
alla
to
comprensione
contribute to
reciproca.
dialogue and to
Ecco,
mutual
da qualche
understanding.
anno
Well, for a
l'opinione
few years
pubblica
now, public
globale
opinion,
si
global
è resa
public opinion,
conto
has
che questi
realized
benefici,
that these
che pure
benefits
ci sono e sono
that do
potenziali,
exist or are there
non
potentially
sono così facili
are
da
not
raggiungere
so
e
easy to
internet non li
reach,
porta
and internet does
automaticamente.
not automatically
Ma per
bear these
raggiungerli
values.
occorrono delle
But in order to
condizioni
reach
che è
them,
un
we
po'
need
più
certain
difficile
conditions,
costruire
and it's a little
rispetto
bit more
a
difficult to
quello che
ensure these
immaginavamo.
are in place
E
compared
queste
to what we
condizioni
thought.
sono da costruire
These
insieme,
conditions need to
a
be
livello
built
collettivo.
together at a collective level.
Una degli ambiti dove
One of the
abbiamo
dimensions
probabilmente
where we
sottovalutato
probably have
la
underestimated
necessità di
the
costruire queste
need
condizioni
to
collettive è
build
l'uso di
these
internet da parte dei
collective
bambini.
dimensions is the use of the
Qui c'è
internet
stata
on the part of
una
children.
sottovalutazione
There
degli
was an
aspetti problematici,
underestimation of
per
problematic
esempio
effects. For
l'etichetta che
example,
abbiamo spesso usato
the
di nativi
label we
digitali,
often use
digital
of
natives,
digital natives
ha avuto,
has
diciamo, il
had
difetto di poter essere
the limit
interpretata
of being
come
interpreted
un via
as
libera
a
alla sperimentazione non
open
guidata, alla
free for all
navigazione libera da
to
parte dei
any form
bambini
of
e ci
experimentation
stiamo
and
rendendo
access on the
conto
part of
da
children. And
alcuni
we are
anni che
realizing, we have
invece
been realizing for
i
the last few
bambini
years that
vanno
children
protetti in rete
instead need to
e
be
che ci sono una serie
safeguarded
di effetti
online, and
collaterali
that there are collateral
relativi al loro
effects
utilizzo
pertaining to
libero
their
di
free
internet
use
che
of
riguardano
the
sia i
web,
contenuti
which
a cui
pertain
loro
to contents
si
that they access,
espongono, ma riguarda anche
and
la
also
costante presenza di
the
una stimolazione
constant
mediale durante
presence of
la
media
giornata.
stimulation throughout their day.
Ecco, a questo proposito, negli
So,
ultimi
based
anni,
on this, in the
a
last
livello
few years,
globale sta
at
crescendo la
a global level,
consapevolezza. Ci sono
awareness
stati
is increasing, and
dei
there
libri,
have
l'ultimo molto
been
discusso
books.
di
The last
Jonathan
one
Haidt,
was by
che si
Jonathan
chiama The
High,
Anxious Generation,
called The Anxious Generation,
che hanno fatto aumentare
and
questo
these
dibattito
have increased the level
e
of
ci sono molte
debate.
iniziative
And there
in
are
vari
many
paesi del
initiatives in
mondo,
various countries of the
soprattutto
world,
di gruppi di genitori
especially
che
of
cercano di
groups
trovare una
of
risposta dal
parents who
basso
seek
a
a
una
grassroots
necessità di
response
fare rete,
to the need to
di creare
network,
una
to
collettività
create
per
a
governare questo
collectivity in
fenomeno.
order to govern this
Quindi io
phenomenon.
vi parlerò di
So I will
un'esperienza
talk to you about
italiana
an
che si chiama
Italian
Patti
experience
Digitali.
called
Adesso
Digital
posso in
Pact,
chat magari
and
condividere
I will
il
share
link
the link
di un'esperienza
in the
gemella
chat
con
and
il
a
Comune di
twin
Milano.
one which is
Che
called
cosa sono i patti
Recommendations
digitali?
of
Sono
Milan. What are
un
these?
insieme
What
di
is this
gruppi di
digital pact?
genitori
It's a group of parents
che si sono accordati
who have
localmente,
locally
quindi per esempio in
agreed,
una città,
for
in
example,
una
in a
scuola, in
city,
un
in a school,
oratorio,
or in
in
a
un
church
gruppo
hall,
scout, un
or
gruppo
a
religioso,
scout group, a religious group,
rispetto ad
and they
alcune
have agreed
tappe
about
dell'educazione
some
digitale.
steps
La
in
cosa
terms
che
of
più viene
digital
chiesta dai
education. The thing
genitori
which is most
è, come potete ben
required, requested
immaginare,
out of the parents,
l'età
as
di
you can
arrivo
imagine,
del
is
primo
the
smartphone
age of
personale.
arrival of the
E
first
questa è
personal
l'urgenza
smartphone.
più
This is
grossa
the
con cui
most
i genitori
urgent
arrivano.
question
Ma da
that
qui si
parents have to
parte per una
grapple with.
condivisione
And then
più
from
generale
here, we
dei
move on to
principi
more
su cui
general sharing
basare
of those
un'educazione
principles on
digitale.
which to base
Questi
digital
gruppi
education.
sono ormai
These
100
groups
in
are
tutto
over
il
100
paese, in
throughout the
Italia,
country, Italy,
alcuni sono anche
and
all'estero,
some
nei
are
paesi
even
vicini,
abroad
e siamo
in
in contatto
bordering
con
countries,
alcune
and
realtà
we
anche di
are in
altri
touch
paesi,
with
negli
some
Stati
in
Uniti,
further
in
away countries
Inghilterra,
such as the
in
United
Gran
States,
Bretagna,
in Great
in
Britain,
Francia,
in
in
Spain,
Belgio.
Belgium,
Stanno succedendo cose simili.
and similar
Ecco,
things are
vorrei
taking place.
elencare
I
una
would like
serie di
to
principi
list a range of
che sono i
principles.
principi guida,
These are the
diciamo, di questa
guiding
esperienza
principles
che
which
abbiamo
form
maturato in
the
questi
knowledge
anni
of the
con
experience we
queste
have
famiglie.
matured over
Allora,
these years with these
innanzitutto
families. First of all,
abbiamo concluso
we have
che
concluded
occorre una
that
nuova
we need
gradualità,
a
un ingresso
new,
graduale
more
dei bambini
gradual
alla
approach.
rete,
Children need
e
to
questa
enter
gradualità
the
però
web gradually, and
non è
this
semplicemente
is not
una
simply
decisione delle singole
a
famiglie.
decision of individual families.
Dimenticavo
But
la Spagna, vedo
sorry, I
un
was
commento
forgetting Spain. I see
giustamente,
a comment about
mi
Spain,
ricordano che anche in
and they
Spagna c'è
remind me
una
that
rete di
even
questo
in
tipo.
Spain we have this network.
Ecco, il primo principio è
So
costruire
the
una
first
gradualità, che però
principle is to
dicevo
be
non
gradual
è
in the approach,
solo la decisione delle
but
singole
this is not
famiglie di
just the
quando
decision of individual
concedere
families as
diversi
to
utilizzi della
when
rete o di
to
gruppo
access the
che
web
utilizzi fare insieme,
or what
ma
to do
riguarda delle
together,
scelte
but
collettive.
it's collective
Quindi la
choices.
gradualità
Therefore,
dell'accesso
the
dei bambini alla
gradual
rete va
access of
costruita
children to the
insieme,
network needs to
in
be
una
built together
comunità.
in a community.
Secondo principio
Second principle,
che caratterizza questa esperienza
which
è che
qualifies this experience,
occorra
is that
confrontarsi
we
insieme su
need
quali
to
utilizzi
look
significativi,
together
quali
as to
utilizzi
what is a
che accrescono
significant use, what
la nostra
use
umanità,
can
diciamo così,
increase our
sono
humanity,
opportuni alle diverse
and
fasce d'età.
which are
E abbiamo,
most appropriate to which age
abbiamo
groups.
stabilito
We have
che di questi
established
utilizzi
that
ce ne
out of these
sono alle diverse
uses,
fasce d'età.
there are
Quindi
various
fin dai
ones depending
bambini
on their age. So,
piccoli è
starting from
possibile
small
prevedere
children,
alcuni
it's
utilizzi
possible
significativi,
to
ovviamente con
have
dei
some
limiti di tempo
significant
e in maniera
use of
guidata dagli
smart
adulti.
devices, of
Poi
course, with time
questi
limits and guided
utilizzi
by adults. Then this use
diventano più autonomi mano a
becomes
mano
more
che
independent
l'età
as
aumenta. Terzo principio,
age
il
increases. The third
fatto che
principle, the
le
fact
figure
that
educative
the
e le figure
educational figures
sanitarie, ho
and
un minuto
healthcare
giusto?
practitioners, I think I have 1 more minute left,
Devono collaborare, quindi
must
l'educazione
cooperate,
digitale
and
è una
therefore
questione
digital
educativa, ma è anche una
education
questione di
is
salute
about
pubblica e quindi abbiamo
pedagogy, but
coinvolto
also public health,
direttamente
and therefore
i
we
pediatri
involved
di famiglia.
directly the
Ehm,
pediatricians.
Ancora, la creazione di spazi
Then the
protetti da
creation
parte
of
delle compagnie
safe spaces
web,
on the part
quindi
of
da parte
web
delle
companies,
piattaforme, da parte
so
dei produttori di
platforms,
hardware e software,
producers of
e
hardware and
quindi il
software,
dialogo
and therefore
con
dialogue
queste
with
industrie
these
perché i
sectors
prodotti e gli ambienti
so that the
siano
products and the
rispettosi
environments
dei
are
bambini.
respectful of
Ecco,
children.
credo che è ultimo punto la
And the last
formazione degli
point
adulti.
is
Gli adulti
adult
spesso
training.
hanno problemi
Adults often have
anche loro stessi nell'utilizzo di questi
issues
media e
themselves
vanno
in
formati
using such media,
in
and they
diverse
need to be
dimensioni.
trained in
Concludo
various ways.
dicendo che
I would conclude
il
by
rispetto
saying that
dei bambini e
respect
della loro,
for
diritto di
children
avere
and their
un
right
ingresso nel mondo
to
della
have a
comunicazione graduale
gradual
e guidato
ingress
dagli
within the
adulti
world
è
of
certamente
communication, and
parte
which is
della
guided by adults, is
comunicazione
certainly part
responsabile e
of
anche della
responsible
costruzione della
communication
pace.
and also building peace. Thank you very much.
Ho ricordato al film Inside Out,
Thank you.
che
It
è
made me
molto
think of the film
forte
Inside Out,
l'emozione
which is
dell'anxiety
the
proprio
anxiety
dei
is very
giovani
is
anche in
strong
questo
in
mondo.
young
Vero,
people in this
professore?
world. That's true.
È molto prezioso questo
What you say
contributo
is very
anche
precious for
questo è
us
molto informativo e
and
formativo,
of
particolarmente
very
questo
rich in
party digitale.
information.
E grazie mille,
Thank you very
professore.
much,
E
Professor.
grazie a Michele,
And thank
Lily,
you,
Reverend
Michele,
John,
Lily, Reverend John,
Ghislaine, Emil e
Ghislaine,
professore
Emil,
Marco
and Professor
per
Marco
promuovere un
for
giornalismo
having promoted
dialogico
a
e una
dialogical journalist
comunicazione responsabile
and
in questo
responsible
momento
communication
di
at this
digitalizzazione.
point of time
Adesso
in this
possiamo
forum
passare
for
al nostro
digitization.
gruppo,
We now move on to our groups. Once
subito alla
again,
sala del dialogo
we
per le
go
lingue.
into dialogue per
Ciascuno
languages,
può
and
aggiungere da
everybody
solo
can
alle
add
lingue.
themselves to the
E
groups.
poi finiamo
And
alle
then we
17:20 per
finish
il
at
lavoro di gruppo.
5:20
Adesso
and we
è
meet all
buonanotte nelle
together.
Filippine,
So good night in the
mezzanotte
Philippines.
proprio,
It's
e
midnight,
grazie.
and thank you.
Bentrovati nella sala principale. Eravamo nel pieno di una discussione nel gruppo italiano, immagino anche negli altri gruppi
So the discussion in the
linguistici.
Italian group, and imagine also in the
Questo ci dà un po'
other linguistic group,
la cartina di tornasole
was very
del
lively. And
desiderio
this
di stare
gives us the
insieme e
idea
continuare
that
a
we have a
parlare
great
di
desire to
questi
be
argomenti.
together and still talk about these
Leggerò le
topics. I will
conclusioni
read
che,
a
come dice il
few
programma, sono
conclusions that, as
tutte
the program
aperte.
goes, are open
Viviana
conclusions.
infatti dice
In
un
fact,
reunione muy interesante e pratico.
Viviana says muy practical
Appunto leggerò
level.
alcune
So,
conclusioni che sono più delle
we read some
questioni
conclusions that
aperte
are open
e che
perspectives
desideriamo portare
that we
avanti
want to bring
oltre
ahead
questo congresso.
much beyond this Congress.
Ecco, siamo arrivati alla fine del
So
nostro
we have
congresso
come to the end of our
internazionale
International
Togetherness,
Congress at
Communication and Media
Togetherness,
for Peace.
Communication and Media
Quando
for
abbiamo
Peace.
iniziato a pensare
When
al
we started
titolo di
thinking
questo
about the
evento,
title of
ci
this
è venuto in
event,
mente uno spazio
a
di
space of
incontro e
meeting and
unione per
union
aiutarci
came to mind
reciprocamente a
to help
credere
each
e a
other
generare la
believe
pace.
in and
Da
generate
qui la
peace.
parola
Hence
togetherness.
the word
Oggi
togetherness.
questo termine è
Today,
usato
this
con
term is used
insistenza negli studi sui
insistently in media
per
studies
esprimere
to
quel
express
particolare
that
fenomeno che ha
particular
prodotto
phenomenon
Internet,
that the
ossia la
Internet has
possibilità di
produced, that
stare
is,
insieme e
the
di
possibility
sentirsi
of being
vicini,
together and
quasi
feeling close,
epidermicamente,
almost
nonostante le
epidermically,
diverse
despite the
geografie e le
different
diverse longitudini.
geographies and
Tuttavia,
longitudes.
abbiamo riflettuto in
However,
questi
we
2
have
giorni
reflected in
che
these
questa
2 days
prossimità o
that
questo
this
stare
being
insieme
together,
non
this
è sempre
proximity is not
qualitativamente
always
alto e
qualitatively
relazionalmente
high and
fecondo in termini di
relationally
rapporti
fruitful
interpersonali.
fertile in terms of interpersonal relationships. In all the spaces of reflection that we have shared yesterday and today, from digital ethics to generative communication, from edu communication to dialogical journalism, the need to re-question ourselves on the world of life in this post-media universe in which we are immersed has been emphasized, especially in the group work. The desire arose to work together on new educational models and media literacy and especially data literacy, to reflect together on the world of computer ethics and AI, both at a theoretical level and at the level of protocols and best practices, to come together to promote a culture of solidarity and reconciliation through the tools that the media ecosystem offers us as influencers for peace do. And finally, to draw on the figure of Chiara Lubich and the charism of unity to face together the challenges of a global reality that, as various contributions have emphasized, is complex and deeply polarized. The 25th anniversary of the foundation of Net1 seems an excellent opportunity to share and make visible the network of works, research, and best practices that we are already carrying forward. As Pope Francis says, in the adventure of life, we are not alone. Jesus holds out his hand to us. From this perspective, working in the world of communication with a capital C, and above all, doing it together really means working for a medium of hope, a way to dispel loneliness, qualitatively increase being together, and be generators of relational goods and peace. So we thank each and everyone for participating. We thank especially Francesco Mazzarella, who made possible the entire organization and technical implementation of the meeting, and the interpreters who accompanied us, making it possible to express ourselves in our plurality of languages. Finally, we especially thank Isabel Gatti, who was very active behind the scenes. And all of that was made available in the form of, we wanted to make the contributions presented available so that everyone can be access to it in the form of an open access digital publication as a point of departure for further research. The speakers, we invite the speakers to extend their abstract under the form of an article, under the form of an open access digital publication. So thanks to everyone, and we hope to meet again according to the conditions and possibility that will be possible in the near future.
Buona serata a tutti dal Filippine, buon pomeriggio e buona mattina per il Latino America.
Good evening and good morning for Latin America.
Grazie a tutti.
Grazie.
Grazie cada uno.
Ciao, grazie mille.
Ciao.
Saludos,
Ciao.
Isabel. Gracias.
Buenas noches.
Gracias a todo el mundo, grazie. Thank you,
Grazie a
merci.
tutti. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Grazie a tutti.
Grazie.
Voilà.